And if I could ask sort of other board members, if you can just let everyone in from the waiting room, anyone who's coming in after. Good. And we will call to order. All right, very good. Call to order this regular meeting of the Easton Board of Education at 7:30 p.m. on May 11th, 2021. Members in attendance, Jenny Cheetah, Devin Weibel, Randy Hicks, Jeff Parker, Gretchen Goldstein, and myself, John Stinson. We'll go to second item on the agenda, the approval of minutes for starting with the April 20th, 2021 Easton Board of Education regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
I see Jeff, Randy, Jenny, Devin, and Gretchen, and myself. The motion passes unanimously. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the May 5th, 2021 Easton Board of Education special meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second?
I think I can move and just not vote, right, Joe? Or John?
Anyone else?
We lost John. And we lost me.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Devin. Devin got it. Okay, good. And sorry, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
I see. Good. Jeff, Jenny, Devin, Gretchen, myself, and I think Randy abstains as he was not present. The motion passes 5-0. Very good. So we'll move to public comment. I would ask, we have obviously a very full agenda on a lot of important topics. And we definitely want to hear from the public. We have public comment at the beginning and the end of the meeting. And that is to allow for ample time to hear from the public and make sure that we are hearing the voice. We want to make sure that we're getting to the topics that we need to discuss and make decisions on as early in the night as possible, and that we're not going till 11 o'clock before we're getting to some of those important discussions and possible actions where we may need to vote. So I will ask that people please keep your comments brief. Please, if you can, be concise. We will be we'll be asking people to maintain sort of 2 minutes per comment. And if we go past, I think we'll be somewhat flexible, but if we go past 20 minutes of comments, I think we'll look to ask people to save their comments for the latter part of the meeting, the second public comment period. So, but without further ado, let's jump in. If anyone would like to make public comment, please raise your hand using the participant window, or you can flag us down in the video window, and I'll ask my board members to help me detect anyone who I might be missing. I see Sherry Williams is up first. You should be able to unmute now. If you can state your name and your street and town, that would be very helpful.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. Sherry Williams, 26 Riley Road. I just have a quick comment. I feel that both the Easton Board of Education and the ER9 Board of Education should consider very strongly rewording the diversity, equity, and inclusion middle school survey questions. As a parent, I have read through the survey. I'm very uncomfortable with many of the questions. And I feel the survey, especially in certain areas, asks very mature adult-oriented questions of our children. For example, from the survey specifically, it asks or states, below is a list of terms that people often use to describe their gender. Please check all that apply to you. Male, female, non-binary, cisgender, transgender, genderqueer, not sure / questioning, meaning you're doubtful, prefer not to answer, or I'm not familiar with some of these terms. When a parent objected at the DEI task force meeting that their middle school kids might not know what these terms are, it was recommended, or it was suggested or explained that a glossary would be distributed with the survey to define those other terms. Later, after the task force agreed to exclude 10-year-olds, so fifth graders from the survey and start using it for just the 11 and 12-year-olds. So instead of distributing a glossary, I asked that the Board of Ed simply simplify the questions so that children can answer them without reference to a book. It needs to be very simple for our children to understand of this age group. I understand this is sensitive material and we're trying to rule out discrimination, but please keep in mind the age group that we're dealing with. And I really don't think it's appropriate for some parents to comment while the kids are talking about this on the playroom, on the playground anyway. So we should just do it for them. I just don't subscribe to that. Below is a list of terms that people often use to describe their gender. Please check all that apply. For example, why can't it be male, female, other, fill in the blank? Again, these are kids. Why not let our children fill in the other blank with vocabulary that they're already used to using, that they're comfortable using to describe their gender and sexuality, instead of hitting them with a list of complicated terms? The only reason I could think of for not simplifying the questions is that in addition to surveying for discrimination, this survey is also intended to teach students shades of gender, terminology, and concepts at ages that a lot of parents don't feel is appropriate. I feel that it's my role as a parent to decide when and how to discuss shades of gender questions and concepts and concerns with my kids, not the school system. This is an important and sensitive family topic, family-oriented question, given that oftentimes irreversible consequences of some of these gender transformations are up for consideration or discussion. These are family-oriented issues. The purpose of the survey should not be to discover what a student's sexual or gender identification is, or even what terminology they know for that matter. That should be the creator. That may very well be the creator of this survey's agenda, but it should not be Easton's. It should not be part of the Board of Ed. And again, I understand that we're trying to solve for a potential bullying issue here, but you have to understand there's bigger issues that are very concerning to parents at hand. Anyway, I very much thank you for your time, and that is my concern.
Thank you. Maureen?
Unmute. Sorry, not technologically savvy, much older than many on this call, but still have an 11-year-old at HKMS. Maureen Hanley, 21 Andrews Road. I came from the generation of don't judge people on their color or their religion, not to see color instead of focusing on it like this survey clearly does. I feel much of this language is inappropriate at the middle school level and questionable at some of the high school level. Why don't we just want to teach our children tolerance? Tolerance for all religions, all races, all sexes. These conversations, I firmly believe, need to belong in our homes, not in the classrooms. Don't our teachers have enough on their hands? I don't think school is the right place for this. You know, whether it's appropriate or not, I wanted to share a personal story. I went to intercity college. My best friend from college is Black. My children call him Uncle Beebon. They call his wife Aunt Vivian. I call my nephew Zachary. We're a family. We go on vacations together. We talk. We never miss a holiday call together. What I believe this initiative does is bring divisiveness to our community and into our schools. It does not teach our children to be kind. It does not teach them to be tolerant. It teaches them to identify. And that's all I wanted to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Julianne?
Yes, hi. 18 Wells Hill Road, Julianne Liccamelli. I respectfully disagree. I think this survey is great. I think it's, as somebody who has siblings in the LGBTQ community, they've told me, many of my friends have told me that they identify with a lot of these identities from a very young age. People know what this is. YouTube's a thing, Instagram's a thing. And I know that's an argument that people have heard 1,000 times, but it's 100% true. People have phones, people have social media. Hopefully I would still consider myself young person. I think that that's true. And I just would love the opportunity for some of these kids to learn maybe what these identities mean for them, and for us to all learn if they're being discriminated against in schools, and that's it. And to have that information, I think, is going to be really, really valuable. And it's going to make people feel really safe. And I think if I were a kid with an identity I was unsure about, or an identity that I knew of but didn't have the words to describe it, surveys actually can help you identify what you're feeling or what your identity is. And they're a tool of education as well. And so I think that that's really important when we say like, oh, we're scared of glossary, whatever. Like, I think a glossary is great. It's more learning for kids. Parents can sit down and go through and see all the different words they don't know and think about what those mean. And so I'm thinking a lot about the positives here. The DEI committee has not done this on a whim. They have spent so long coming up with this wonderful survey with statisticians and researchers on the team. And I think that they've done wonderful work, and I think we should approve it and really like take a step forward with this work in our community and see where it can go. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yes, thank you. Kevin Oliver for Lilac Lane. Speak to item 5F on the agenda tonight. I have a child who's in Helen Keller, and I am an exorbitant tax-paying citizen in town. I've attended many of the ER9 DAI task force meetings of the committee. I do not accept the premise that systemic racism, unconscious bias, and widespread racial and gender bullying exist in our town and our schools. I am, however, more concerned that the bullying that I have in fact heard of in Easton comes oftentimes from an intolerant social activist speaking from righteous platforms who are attempting to use our schools and our children as pawns in an adult political conflict. We already survey our schools for bullying or perceived threats as required by Connecticut state law. That survey is 11 pages. This new survey is twice as long at 21 pages. The 11-page bullying survey includes a question that reads, if you have been treated unfairly, please explain, with a blank space for the student to comment in their own words. To me, that bullying survey question is a safe space that already gives the students an opportunity to explain in their own words if they feel that they have been treated unfairly. The ER9 DEI committee of 15 to 20 people who have been appointed by the democratically controlled ER9 Board of Education is pushing this second survey onto our town of 7,000 people, which has a familiar ring to it, given the recently and colossally failed referendum in this town. Objections raised by parents at these and the town meetings have been largely ignored. And we all saw what the disastrous result of that was at the failed town vote. I suggest that if we are going to go forward with this unnecessary survey, that the wording of several questions be looked at and possibly changed. For example, the proposed DEI survey asked on question 29, quote, regarding those that I can turn to for help, at least one of these adults I share a common, check all that apply. 1, race, surprising. 2, gender. 3, gender identity. 4, sexual orientation. 5, religion. 6, other. 7, I do not have these things in common. Or 8, not sure. I disagree wholeheartedly with the assumption underlying the question that only someone who shares your race, your sexual orientation, your gender, or etc. can understand or support you. The very insinuation of such is rather objectionable and in fact monstrous. I say that we are people first. We should be teaching our children that they are people first and that they can understand people who are different from them without sharing the same race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, or etc. I think that is what we can refer to as a truly teachable moment in what we call tolerance. I suggest question 29 be dropped or reworded. One possibility could be something like regarding those who I turn to for help, Although they may be different in race, gender, sexual orientation, or religion than myself, I feel I have not been discriminated against in seeking help with sensitive matters. True, false, or explain, just like we have on the bullying questionnaire. Please carefully review the survey. If you do decide to go forward with it and it's 21-page extent, I would ask that you take a look and possibly reword questions like that. In particular, I'm concerned about questions number 7, 25, 26, 27, 34, 35. I could probably go on the latest draft that was sent around. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jack?
Hi, Jack Beebon, 939 Blackrock Turnpike. I just wanted to say I am a gay, non-binary man who went through the Year 9 school system. I went through Easton, and I 100% was discriminated against because of my gender identity and my sexual identity. And ever since the age I was 6, I was called the word faggot, F-slur, by other kids my age 6. From kindergarten to about senior year, I was called the F-slur. Every day walking into school, I would get called the F-slur. I would hear, oh my God, that fucking faggot is back. Just walking into school from my car, all I was trying to do was go to my locker, go to class. I had a teacher tell me that they believed in electroshock therapy, so I didn't really feel that safe. Freshman year, every day in one of my classes, there were 2 kids that tried to out me every single day because whenever I said something, like let's say we were talking about the Persian Gulf War, I'd said something, some girls agreed, they would say, oh, all the girls agreed, it's because he's a fucking fag. I asked the teacher one time if they were going to do anything about this, and they told me no, why would I?
Can I interject and ask that we please refrain from profanity? I think we can get the gist of the comments without that. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm
Jenny.
very sorry. It's just when I think about it in my head, I just think about the literal words that they used.
Understood.
I'm very sorry about that. Another time I was walking down the hallway during Pride Week and I was called a transgender F-slur. In middle school, I was on the ski bus for a ski club and I had to run and hide in the bathroom for 45 minutes because some kids wanted to beat me up for being gay. One time in health class, we were asked to write down questions we had about just, like sex, gender, just like stuff of that nature. A kid wrote down anal ? As a joke. Everybody laughed and then we moved on without actually explaining anything. These are just some of the examples of the many examples I have. I have more physical altercations as well that range from about 3rd, 4th grade all the way to high school. I have like at least 3 for every year I was at school. And it is something that I believe this survey would help because if people know the terminology and they know how it is and like what it is, like especially with the glossary, like if they know like what these specific things are, it would really help people find it and just like know what it is because it's not taught and so it's not seen as normal or as accepted in our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Susan?
Sorry. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Susan Falzone, 87 Flat Rock Road. I wanted to come on and voice my support for this survey. I'm a mother to a non-binary child, and I think this survey is extremely important to help collect data to see what the school climate is for minority groups in our schools. I want to know that my child, along with all other children, are safe, respected, and welcomed. It's absolutely horrific to hear of Jack's experience, and that's exactly what I'm terrified for my child. And there is additional survey information done in the state of Connecticut to support exactly what Jack was just sharing with us. GLSEN, who's been around for over 30 years, is a leader in advocating and educating to support LGBTQ+ students in schools, does school climate surveys, and the one done for Connecticut in 2017 shows that 85% of students heard homophobic remarks. 81% heard negative remarks about their gender expression, 71% negative remarks about trans people. For sexual orientation, 62 experienced verbal harassment, over 20% were physically harassed, and 9% physically assaulted. There's similar numbers for gender and gender identity as well associated to that. As a concerned parent, I think the survey data is extremely important and vital to help ensure our schools are safe and accepting, and our students can thrive and excel in school as they were intended. And regarding the comment about being concerned with asking someone's gender identity, children know their gender as young as 3 years old. Gender is asked in many surveys, including our current school climate surveys. The only difference is that cisgender options are the only option, or other, where the DEI survey is inclusive. I can share from my personal experience that it's offensive when I'm asked what my child's gender is and the only option is other to identify them. My child, like all others, deserve to be acknowledged and accepted for who they are and not just labeled as other. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Agnes, and we are coming up against the 20 minutes, so I just want to make sure people are mindful of that.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry. Agnes Bond, 939 Black Rock Turnpike. I want to speak in support of DEI work and the survey. My brother spoke earlier about some of the trauma that he faced while in ER9 schools. To anyone who says it doesn't happen here, I hope that's an attestment that you can listen to and understand that while your child might not face this, many children in our schools are. Another example that I can think of was people calling my brother a girl and transgender, even though he wasn't, and there's nothing wrong with that. When he was in middle school, I did report this to administration. They suspended the child continued to bully him. This punishment doesn't work, education does. People who preach tolerance is amazing. It's not even happening in our schools. And to anyone who's uncomfortable with the language that Jack used, imagine being called that from the age of 8, walking into school until you graduate. Imagine how uncomfortable that is. I agree, parents are also so important in this work. However, schools are meant to also prepare us for life. And that includes this language. The glossary is great. I encourage parents to read through the glossary and become familiar with words they're unfamiliar with. This is the language that's used in the rest of the world. Easton does not exist in a bubble. I strongly support the survey. I strongly support GLSEN, which is where many of the survey questions come from. They're all educators who are very good advocates for the LGBTQ+ community. And I really hope that these surveys get sent out and that we are able to use the data to make sure that our schools are inclusive, safe, and welcoming. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are sort of over the 20 minutes that we had allotted for this. So I would encourage anyone who would like to make additional public comment to join us in the public comment at the end. We do have a very full agenda and we want to move on to board member comment and then the reports. Is there any board member comment? Yes, Jeff.
This is concerning item 5F on the agenda. Under the board committee reports that include the DEI survey. My comments are to that point. I've always viewed our Easton schools as warm, giving, and united in providing the best educational experience for our children. More than just the academic piece, we've always been committed to educating the whole child, which includes their social and emotional well-being. So on the tri-board's motion to create the DEI committee, I voted yes, expecting a thorough review of what the districts currently do well while uncovering areas that need corrective action, along hopefully with some recommendations for us as a tri-board to consider. After reviewing the survey questions dated 5/6/21, I was disappointed to find no substantive work was done in this area. Therefore, as the survey is not germane to Easton, I can't support it as represented. hopefully common ground can be found and revisions made. Because certainly some of the input from some of the students that have been on public comment deserve to be understood better and investigated thoroughly, because that kind of bullying does not is horrendous, and it should not be allowed ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Devin?
First, I just wanted to thank the town quickly about the budget program. The budget vote.
You're breaking up, Devin. Sorry, the audio is cutting out.
For the budget vote, better. The budget passed in a margin of 2-1. And I know it's the hard work of this board, but also the extremely hard work of each person in town who made the effort to get out and vote. We had over 2,000 people. And so it was just an incredible showing of support for our schools. I will save my comments about the survey when we get to that item on the agenda.
Great. Any additional board? Yes, Jenny.
Same with Devin about the vote. I just think it was wonderful to see so many people come out, and thank every single person who came out to cast a vote. Not even about for or against, but just the overwhelming participation from the town has been really heartening to see so many people involved. Want to thank John and Rydell and Clarence and Stephanie and all of our administrators for everything they did to frame our story and help to get the budget passed. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing the fruits of all that labor next year with some wonderful things coming back to us. And we mentioned it the last time we met, but I think with a larger audience, I just wanted to recognize Sue. I think we'll have lots of opportunities to sing your praises and thank you. But as much as it's a great loss to see you go, I'm so happy for you for this next step, and really look forward to seeing what comes next for you. But I think Devin mentioned the last time, we certainly hope you'll not be a stranger and stay close with us and stay involved and continue to share your wisdom and experience with us as we move forward. So I just wanted to say thank you. And same thing with the survey. We'll get to it later.
Yep. Thank you, Jenny. Any additional board member comment? Okay. That will take us to reports. Dr. Harrison.
Good evening, everyone. I have two items that I wanted to report on this evening. The first is that last week we submitted the ESSER 2 grant. You'll recall that ESSER 2 is the second federal grant that we're receiving as a COVID response. There's another grant that is that we're talking about now, that application process will be due in August, and there'll be more discussion about that. There's a community involvement piece that's related to that. So you'll hear more about that going forward. But the ESSER 2 grant for $123,338 over 2 years, we had to submit that application. There were 4 priority areas that we could align our grant to. Our grant is focused on priority area number 1, academic supports, learning loss, learning acceleration, and recovery. And so as part of that plan, the district will assemble a small diverse acceleration planning team who will plan and lead this initiative, and talked a little bit about this acceleration process a couple of meetings ago. We'll be partnering with the Center for School Change's Acceleration Network Improvement Community. This will bring together a small number of district teams committed to a common pursuit of improving outcomes for all of our students, while accelerating the growth of those students who are furthest behind as a result of unfinished learning. The district will also utilize university interns to increase the use of small group instruction and to provide targeted intervention next year and the year beyond for the next 2 years. We want to support our students in need of Tier 2 and Tier 3 academic support in reading and math. Also, the district will be focusing on enrichment. We talked about funding our extracurricular activities at Keller. And we've also had a lot of discussion about the Summer Learning Academy, the summer programming, which is also focused on acceleration in core content areas, but then also really has a unique focus on enrichment. And so those are pieces related to that ESSER 2 grant. And like I said, you'll hear more about the ESSER 3. It's called the ARP ESSER grant. That will more information to come on that. The second piece that I'm excited to talk about tonight is about the CABE Student Leadership Award. The CABE Student Leadership Awards program is for middle and high school students who exhibit exemplary leadership skills. Last week, Dr. Pearson-Ugal, Ms. Kaplan, Ms. Moore, Mr. Walsh, and I had an opportunity to surprise 2 of our 8th grade students and present the CABE Leadership Awards in person. The 2 recipients who were chosen by their teachers, they were chosen because they exhibit the following leadership skills: willingness to take on challenges, capability to make difficult decisions, concern for others, ability to work with others, willingness to commit to a project, diplomacy, ability to understand issues clearly, and ability to honor a commitment. So I want to say a huge congratulations to Audrey Gill and Owen Fellows, both of whom are joining us tonight. And Ms. Kaplan is going to share a little bit more information about each of them. They have their certificates that they were able to take home, but we're so excited to celebrate them and honor them publicly as well. Sue?
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. It seems like literally yesterday when Owen and Audrey walked into Helen Keller as 6th graders. And I'm very excited to read a short blurb about both students and why they received this award. Owen, and I want to introduce Ro and Joseph sitting with him. Nice to see you both here with Owen. Owen is a kind and bright student and a leader in the classroom. He leads by his willingness to continue to get the most out of every school day. He makes decisions easily and shows concern for others and the environment. He easily navigates the social and academic challenges of school without stress, and in this way, he leads by example too. Owen has enthusiastically led his peers in debates, again modeling the truth that learning to simply improve oneself, notwithstanding of grades, is a very good thing. Congratulations to Owen and to his parents on receiving that award. Second, I see the Gill family. I'd like to say hi to Audrey with her parents. I see Von and Gregory. Nice to see you.
Hello, Ms. Kaplan.
How are you?
Audrey is a kind and friendly student, as well as a curious and conscientious student. She leads by example. In the classroom, she's always engaged in asking questions. She takes pride in her work and has led her peers in group work and projects and debates. She enjoys intellectual puzzles and has a natural curiosity that will suit her well in life. Audrey is a positive presence in our building, always saying hello, and is usually quick with a joke. She is a born leader. Congratulations to Audrey and the entire Gill family. This is what makes my job so wonderful.
Thanks, Sue. I was so excited to meet both Owen and Audrey during our presentation. I told them that I am planning on stalking them as they go into high school because I'm always looking to partner with fantastic young leaders and look forward to what they'll continue to do and the great work that they'll continue to do as they transition to high school. So congratulations again to both of them.
Excellent. Thank you. That takes us to 5B, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Stephanie Pearson-Ugal.
Thank you. So first, another congratulations to our CABE award winners. It was terrific to be at Helen Keller in person, to be able to celebrate this wonderful achievement with our Helen Keller students. So again, congratulations to you both. I'd also like to follow up on what Dr. Harrison was sharing about our grant funding and provide a little bit more specific detail about our use of interns and student teachers next year. This year, we have not used student teachers in our buildings for the most part. Small exception being if we were able to get a counseling intern, then that might have been allowed. But across all 5 buildings in ER9, we really put a hold on that for a couple of reasons. One, because of the health and safety protocols that have been in place this year and the many unknowns as we were reopening our buildings this fall. I really didn't think it would be fair to those who were doing their pre-service work before entering professional certified teaching positions, that not knowing what the year had in store would simply not be fair to them. So we are really excited about being able to reinstitute student teaching in our schools next year, and also to increase our use of interns using grant funding. So that will serve us in a number of ways. The first and probably most important is that we're giving back to the teaching profession. We're able to provide wonderful models in our expert teaching staff so that our student teachers can learn from our teachers through that cooperating teacher-student teacher relationship. When their student teaching experience completes, then they will serve as building interns. And that will provide a tremendous support to our students across grade levels, across content areas, because those interns will be able to support small group instruction, be able to provide extensions and interventions for our students, and finally serve as substitute teachers when needed. So that will be a budgetary support, but really a support to our students and a support to our staff. They'll be familiar with the building, with the routines, with our students, and that will be a great support for us. Our proximity to area universities is not hurting either, and we have had tremendous interest. So there are a number of people that have already been signed up. I know that Mrs. Fox Santora interviewed many prospective interns a couple of weeks ago, and we're just so eager to have them with us next fall. And the next short item on my agenda is just a curriculum update. As a number of people have noticed this year, curriculum documents that used to be linked through the school websites and through the central office websites were not available because the transition that we had planned to make last summer from a reliance on an electronic filing cabinet known as Rubicon Atlas to a Google folder setup that was planned really over the course of an entire year through the ER9 Curriculum Steering Committee in collaboration with the Easton, Reading, and Region 9 Board of Ed curriculum committees. That transition could not take place as planned because of the need to reprioritize our energy last summer. So I'm looking forward to re-engaging in that work this summer and hopefully really improving the communication of our curricula. All requests for curricula have been completed this year, but it's required a little bit more work, oftentimes an email or a phone call, and a number of individuals looking to pull documents to satisfy those requests. So we are looking forward to an improvement in that communication and hope to have it up and running next fall.
Just a quick question, John, for
Sure.
Stephanie.
Yes.
So do you think it'll be fully up by then, Stephanie, or partially up, or what? I mean, your goal is to improve it, but there was 0, so it's a low bar, so to speak. But I apologize, but you know what I mean. Like,
yes.
When do you think it'll be sort of all there, or most?
Yes. So my goal, Randy, is to have ILA and math units of study with standards, content and skills, K through 8, up in the fall. So
Awesome.
The math department in particular at the middle school has already mapped this out comprehensively. And I'll be working with the content leaders to get more specific about exactly what we're doing in the summer in order to prepare for that. But that's the plan, K through 8, math and ILA.
Terrific. Great. Thank you.
Any additional questions for Dr. Pearson-Ugo? Okay. Thank you very much, Stephanie. That takes us to 5C, Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Zachary.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I apologize. I'm in my mobile office here at Bradley Airport, so bear with me. I guess we'll go with the transfers first. We'll try to just quickly give me a full agenda. You can pull that up, please, sir.
Yes, indeed.
I will note one change in the format. We were able to the new eFinance Plus. We were able to get some descriptions in the second column from the right. So now you, instead of asking us what it's for, there are some descriptions there which sort of explain where the money is coming from and going to. These are all mostly SPED-related transfers. There's nothing really particular note here, but I just want to make it available to you all if you have any questions in regards to what we have for transfers for April, mid-April to early May.
Good. Any questions for Clarence with relation to the transfers report?
I thought I heard Clarence say that these are mostly related to special education, but it seems like a couple of them are coming out of special education and going into other professional services. Is the other still special education?
Yes. Randy, you said the BCBA, that's the special education. The most of it you see is the BCBA, and it's also the SRV. Those are all special education related. So it's basically they're transferred within their SPED account to another SPED account.
Yep. Okay. Very good.
Any additional questions with relation to the transfers report? Okay.
Mr. Chair, if you can go to the budget object summary next, please.
Absolutely.
I'll
zoom in on this one.
All right. So the details there, you're familiar with the format. We've made some format adjustments based off the comments we've got from the public in the past. But if you scroll down to the last page, sir, I think that's where Mr. Parker is going to be asking questions. So we can go down to the last page. We can preempt his questions.
Thank you. Thank you for noticing, Clarence.
That's what I'm getting paid to do, Mr. Parker. So right now, our operating budget, as you recall from our previous discussions, we have that third column from the right, talk about anticipated expenditures. That's typically salaries, social security payments, and other things that the schools have been identified. They think for certain they're going to spend, but they haven't encumbered yet. If you factor that out, we're left with a balance around of $125,000, which is less than 1%. Before Mr. Parker asked me, we will be adding back an additional almost $71,000 in grants that we have identified as of April 28th. So our net, if you combine those two, is about $196,000 as of the end of April. Of course, that's subject to change depending on what comes up in May and June. But as of right now, we're looking at projecting approximately $196,000 and available after the reimbursements from the grants.
Clarence, do we have our excess special ed costs returned yet?
Yes, we got the first payment. We're waiting on the second, but we know what it is. We know the amount, but that's included in that 71,000, Mr. Parker.
Okay.
So that 70,976 is an all-in number for the grant as of April 28th. If there are any questions of the object summaries, but like I said, I know you got a full agenda, so I don't want to take up too much time.
I think we're good.
Okay.
All right.
Healthcare?
I sent out, go ahead. Yeah, healthcare. I apologize it's going out today, but we just got the report in this morning, so we had to get it out. Short and sweet of it, we're doing very well in regards to our performance on the healthcare. Mr. Chairman, if you could blow it up a little bit, please.
Sure.
The main thing of focus is our claims at the bottom right. You see our claims for April and our year-to-date average, and so we're doing very well. Reserve balance is slightly below 500,000. We've got 2 months left. We have not drawn down all amounts that we have budgeted, so I feel very comfortable where that will end up. I think the previous discussion about the just under 200,000 we may have available. We may have to have a discussion about adding to the reserves to get it back up to like a 3-month average of our claims. So 3 months is probably going to be north of 600,000. Right now we're just shy of 500,000, but I think we have some flexibility to make those adjustments.
John, can you pan back out again so you can see the month column on the left?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you.
Not at all.
So you all should have this email, the board members should, but for the public.
Yep, and we'll get this posted to make sure that this is available as part of the materials.
We don't have to go through this tonight, and Clarence and I or whoever can take this offline, but the reserve, if we go the next 2 months at our monthly budgeted amount of 216,000. Since we did the first 10 months at 197, call it 20,000 per month under our budget, that's 200,000. We started the year at 718. We should finish the year at 918. So,
Randy, this goes back to the question, but we have not drawn down what we were allocated from the town because it's sort of still sitting there. So we can still draw it down. Like in our other district, Reading, we're the opposite story. We're having to draw down what's left in order to make sure we can get to the end of the year because their claims have been, extremely high this year.
I understand. It's a difference of it's cash versus accrual accounting essentially, and I'm not an accountant, but that's the difference. So I just want to make sure the town and everybody on the board understands that if we do the next 2 months, May and June, on our budgeted amount of 216 a month, we'll end the year at a $900,000 reserve. So don't look at the 500,000 and say, gee whiz, we're low by 100,000 where we want to be at 600. We're actually going to be 300,000 to the good.
Randy, by budgeted amount, you mean that our claims would be close to or less than that amount?
So if right now we budgeted 216,000 every month for 12 months. Mm-hmm. We've averaged for the first 10 months 197 based on what's on this report. I don't know if that's, I assume it's all perfectly accurate. So we've saved over the first 2 months an average of 20,000 a month, 19,000. So we're under budget to the tune of 200,000 with 2 months to go. We started the year at a $718,000 balance. If we just maintain our monthly budget for the last 2 months, we'll end the year 200,000 in the black.
So there was an issue the last time we talked about this, and I know that the reporting was all sort of wonky because for any number of reasons, but there was a function of the administrative costs not being included. That's not the case here, right? This is inclusive of everything.
Yeah, this is all the issues they had from January through March are fully washed through. You'll see the bounce back in the claims from January, February, March, April. So you see April's much more in line with the November through December month. So it's all washed through right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just reemphasizing, I think where Clarence started, which is we're doing well on healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Randy, thank you for bringing that up because I actually think that, I was thinking of it differently and that helped.
Randy is absolutely correct. The 500,000 is what's actually in the bank versus what we have available because we haven't drawn down from our allocated amount in the town.
Got it.
And
that's why it says bank reserve. The labeling is very specific. It's what's in the actual physical bank account.
Yep.
And for the benefit of the public, if you look at the annual budget line, you will see that every year what we have put aside, we have increased the budget. For next year, we did not take any increase because we realized that we had a reserve balance that could take the heat, so to speak, based on our history. So we should be in a very solid place next year financially when it comes to health insurance.
Right. I think it was at the January tri-board that we had our health insurance experts come and talk to us. And I think the recommendation was to have it at, somewhere between 20 and 25%. We looked at the numbers and it said, you're in very good shape and the reserve, is set up properly. So good.
Mr. Parker, I just make one caveat to your statement. Your statement is spot on correct. The caveat assuming everything stays the same for the next 2 months. If something changes, that changes the discussion. If we get some large claims in May or June, that obviously could change that discussion.
I certainly understand that, and if that happens, it'll hurt my feelings. But okay, we've got some room.
Yeah, if you have wood paneling in that car, if you could knock it for us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, knock it on wood.
All right.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless there's any additional questions for me.
Any additional questions for Mr. Zachary?
We're good.
All right. Thank you very much, Clarence, and safe travels.
Flight delayed.
Of course.
Thanks for being with us, Clarence.
Yeah.
Oh, no, my pleasure.
All right. That brings us to 5D, Director of Special Education, Jennifer Del Conte.
I'm actually not going to report on anything this month. I know we have a very full agenda. I think, everything is pretty consistent from last month. So does anyone have any question for me? If not, then we could just move along on the agenda.
Did anyone have any questions on any of the materials that Jen had provided and that were a part of the materials that were posted online? No?
We're good. We're good.
Good. All right. Thank you very much, Jen. All right. That takes us to SSES. Kim?
Hi. With all due respect to your riveting conversation on healthcare claims, I am still welling up over Owen and Audrey's win. I have to tell you, these two little, well, they're not little anymore. I've had them since they were little. They have always been such happy, kind, well-liked, such wonderful human beings, and Helen Keller's team picked two wonderful individuals for this award. So congratulations to those kids and to their parents for raising such beautiful children. Easton is very proud of them. I wanted to share a real wonderful thank you to the Teacher Appreciation Week chairs and to the PTO for truly one of the most wonderful celebrations and appreciation that they gave the Samuel Staples staff. It really was such a unique year. And yes, there were challenges along the way, but I have to say this team of people, they just thought outside the box and they just came up with such unique ways to recognize all of us and thank us. And it really was a wonderful week that everyone really will cherish forever. So thank you to all of those folks. I wanted to give you an update on kindergarten enrollment. We have had 75 registration packets distributed. 48 of them have been returned. Our potential, when I spoke to you folks last month, I told you potential would be 81. I am now increasing that to 87 based on the calls that we've received. I want to draw your attention to the Samuel Staples report. We went from 34 students who were cohort C learning from home. We're down to 23 students today. Tomorrow will be 22 students. So we're just delighted to have all of these kids back. I want to recognize a fifth grader named Annabelle Lau. Annabelle entered the Yukon, Connecticut Training and Technical Assistance Center's poster contest, the 2021 roadway safety poster. She won first place for the grade 4-5 category. John, I don't know if you saw the attachment. Are you able to share the image that I sent to you?
Yes.
It is so eye-catching. You can tell why Annabelle's drawing was selected. It was so special. And the folks from UConn came out to Samuel Staples to deliver a certificate to her and some flowers. And they made it really very special for her and her classmates to see. I'm hoping John can just show you.
It's sideways, and I'm trying to rotate it. It's just the way that Google sent this, so apologies. It's loading it in. And come on. I think everybody just turn your head this way. Apologies.
Look at the detail. I just love it.
I love it too. And I'm really sorry that I'm failing to get this
That's okay.
rotated. I love seeing everybody like this.
I just love it. She did a wonderful job. We are so proud of Annabelle, and she is well deserving of this recognition. I wanted to also share with you that we finally hired a 10-month office assistant. We were without one for about 8 weeks. We hired Ginger Colby. Ginger's been a paraprofessional at Samuel Staples for about 10 years, and she just has such a wonderful way. She's going to be a beautiful ambassador, and we're so happy to have her in the front office. And then finally, we welcome 2 more kindergartners to Samuel Staples. So we're very happy to have the school filled with children. It's good. We're ending on a really good note. And that's all I have. Questions for me?
Thank you, Kim. Any questions for Kim? All right. Thank you very much. Sue.
Thank you. I too want to express my thanks for the PTO and the 2 lead moms who prepared a wonderful Teacher Appreciation Week and Staff Appreciation Week. It just made everyone feel so great to be in school, which they always feel, but it was just nice to feel that appreciation from the community. So thank you. Our cohort C is shrinking weekly. We are about 8% of our students are now in cohort C, a total of 26. We expect, we anticipate and know of a few who are returning in the next week or so. So that continues to shrink, which makes our school feel all the more just, pretty packed and feeling great. And the kids are energized and the teachers are energized to have the students who are returning back in the classroom. I would like to thank Danielle Alves of the Park and Rec, Chief Doyle, Easton Police Department, Joel Silkoff of the Easton Community Center, who have been incredible partners with us, along with the PTO, to plan a wonderful celebration of our 8th grade students at the end of the school year. It'll be an outdoor event, and I'm very, very excited to be able to end the year by celebrating the students who have had a tough year and a half, and but started off in Keller in the old fashion and know what it was like, and that's wonderful. And so I just want to thank those community members who are really contributing a lot to helping us making a wonderful event for our 8th grade students. Finally, I have to thank the Keller staff who are working so hard every day. We know that there are 6 solid weeks left of school, and they are not letting up a beat. I speak with parents very regularly who are so grateful for all the help that the teachers are providing students in so many different ways that are not visible to others, but very visible to the parents who call me with great thanks. And I'm very proud of the staff at Helen Keller Middle School. Have I ever told you in the past that they are wonderful? I just want to reiterate that one more time. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sue. Any questions for Sue? Okay, I am gonna put that up briefly, right side up. When I was able to turn it, I saw like that's very good. I love the shapes here. Just fantastic. Good stuff. All right. Thank you very much. That takes us to board committee reports. We have 2, I believe we have 2 items, and I'll check in with anyone else who has anything to share from any committee meetings or work that they've been doing in other committees. But for sure, I know DEI and Policy Committee have updates. It's worth noting this is in the sort of reports section and not in the discussion and possible action, not accidentally. So the work of committees is meant to be done inside of those committees, obviously in view of the public, but then that sort of work is not approving anything, is not finalizing anything. It is simply doing the homework, bringing it back to the respective boards to report and make recommendations based on the work that's been done in those committee meetings. I can certainly attest to the tremendous amount of work that's happened in the policy committee, the curriculum committee, and obviously the DEI committee as well. So I think Devin was going to give us an update, and then because the DEI committee is a joint committee with our Reading Board of Education as well as the Region 9 Board of Education, it's generally the practice that joint committees, that the actual action and discussion in depth of sort of what the next best action is takes place in joint committee meetings. So the intent is that we are having a sort of full conversation about this and digging deeper into it at our May 25th tri-board meeting. I'm not trying to keep people from having conversation now. We can do that. I just want you to know that there'll also be an opportunity to talk about this with the other two boards on the 25th. So Devin, did you want to provide an update?
Sure, I do. I shared out with the board on Thursday drafts of the equity and inclusion statement, as well as 4 different surveys, 1 draft for middle school students, 1 for high school students, 1 for family and community members, and then 1 for staff. The goal tonight was really to talk about the process of the development of those items, and then just kind of share some, I think, important and pertinent information, and then answer questions that folks may have around those items. I wanted to start with the equity and inclusion statement. John, I don't know if do you want to share that just so people can see it, or it's up to you?
I can. Let me grab that.
Okay, so I'll talk about the process while you're doing so. So the equity and inclusion statement really is meant to be a guiding statement for the work that we are doing as a tri-board or tri-district. This was, the process to develop this was done through a working group that was approved by the DEI committee. The working group was made up of a couple, I think a board member from each of the 3 boards, parents, as well as Dr. Harrison and Dr. Pearson-Ugal. Once John shows it, and I know you've each had a chance to read it, when we met, we talked a lot about language. We spent time looking at our vision and mission statement, as well as our ABCs, because we wanted this equity and inclusion statement to keep with the great work that has continued that has been part of our 3 districts and our schools, and to really, capture the essence of the work that we are, really doing as a community in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. You'll notice we then brought this statement, a draft of this statement, to the full committee. That happened at our last full meeting. So if you want to check that out, the minutes and recording are posted up on the ER9 site, where we talked more specifically around language. We made some edits. We did a little grammar policing to improve some of the length of sentences, and really focused on the verbs, making sure that they were appropriate for this kind of statement. I will say this was a full community effort. We received feedback from the community during the call. We had great feedback from the committee, including students, parents, staff members, and board members that brought us to the draft that you see right now. And so before we go to surveys, I will answer any questions about kind of the process or kind of how we got to the statement.
Are there any questions for Jenny related to the statement?
Yes, I have a question in the middle of the statement where we talk about barriers that are a result of unconscious or conscious systemic and individual bias, prejudice, discrimination. I'm not comfortable with that statement. I think it ties back to sort of the unconscious, bias or systemic racism that has sort of permeated some of the public conversation, not around Easton per se. I'm just not a proponent of labeling, basically calling people, unconsciously biased. So I guess I'll open it. I'll frame it in the form of a question, in that what are we trying to say there, or what are we trying to, I guess, derive? But that's my comment on the draft statement.
So when we talked about this, we actually did talk very specifically about including both unconscious and conscious bias. And the reason for that is if you're alive and breathe, you know, you have bias. Bias is not necessarily bad. It's just something that we all have and should be aware of, as it can impact decisions that we make or the way that we interact with people. And so, especially in an education sense, you know, it's important that we recognize that we may have a way that we think that something is right, and that for other people that isn't right. And so that could bring bias into the decisions we make, our interactions we have. And so it's not a statement of right or wrong, or a statement that is meant to cause anybody to feel bad about themselves. It's just a statement of, you know, making sure that we're aware of what's normal for us may not be normal for everyone, and that we want to be aware of that in our interactions.
So Randy, one of the ways that I've thought about this, and you know, sort of that it's connected with me, is to use the word unintentional instead of unconscious. And I know people may say that semantics, it means the same thing, but I actually think it comes with something else when we say unintentional, meaning like I have no malice in this action that I'm taking, but it's possible that even without meaning to do so, I'm doing something that could be prejudice or discriminatory, and I'm not trying to do that. And it doesn't make me a bad person unless I don't try to reflect on that, unless, you know, somebody gives me the feedback and I go, I don't care about your feedback, you know. But if I take that feedback and try to do better, then that sort of better than unconscious, I think of like unintentional, and then sort of trying to sort of improve the way that I encounter those situations. I don't know if that helps at all, but that's just the way that I've thought about it.
I understand. I look at it and I think we place bias and with folks that can do nothing about it because it's based on appearance. And I'm just against that. And that's what I interpret some of this to mean, because if you're unconscious of it, it leads down a path of, I don't know, nothing I can do about it. You're saying you can fix it because even though you're unconscious about it, I think it leads to, you know, just an area that I think we're labeling folks for what they look like, or their gender, or their religion, or anything else. And I'm not comfortable with that. But I'm just one person raising a, you know, some people would say an uninformed opinion, but that's all. That's my comment.
Well,
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way that this should work, is that people say, hold on a second, I have a concern there, and let's talk about it.
Evan, Evan, I have one question for you as well. Given that I think what's important here is trying to focus on Easton, on our town, on our kids, on our on our kids. I'm curious why you would, in your first sentence, talk about it says community members, and then you go on to say, as well as the uniqueness and experience of people in our state, in our country, and the world. That seems that's an incredibly wide lens, and I think it takes away from the work that we're trying to do here in our own town.
So thank you for the feedback. So when this was drafted by the committee, it was actually really important that we recognize that our students interact not only with folks within our community, within our schools, but that we're preparing them for those interactions, you know, across the state, our, you know, very diverse country and world, and that it's important that while our experiences happen often locally, that the experiences they have in school prepare them to, especially as they get older, prepare them to, be out in the world. And I think it aligns really well if you look, kind of at our vision, mission, and ABCs around like that lifelong learner. And so really it was an intentional choice around that connection to, lifelong learning and to, preparing them to be global citizens.
Well, I think you've covered it in the first part of that sentence. Acknowledge the uniqueness and varied experiences of students, staff, families, and community members. That covers an awful lot of ground, and I think it keeps it circling around our borders and not outside of it. Because the only thing that we can do, I think, is do a wonderful job, a better job, an important job within our schoolhouses between Easton and Reading.
So
we're not going to play tennis with this. I'm just sharing you my my thoughts when I read
it. Jenny, you had
Can I take a turn?
Please.
Is it okay? I don't know. I mean, I don't see any. I think one of the things we have to do when we're looking at these things is, it's kind of like, I don't want to say pick your battles, but I mean, there are some things that are sort of hair triggers for people right now, and some things that just are really not harmful at all, in the way that they're worded. Like the comment that Jeff just made about, uniqueness and experiences of people in our state, country, and the world. I mean, is there really any harm in leaving that in there? I don't see any downside to leaving it in there, because Devin, like what Devin alluded to, it speaks to the greater purpose of our curriculum, which is to prepare our kids to be functional citizens outside of Easton. I don't take it as a comment on Easton's experience versus, like, it doesn't always have to be kind of sort of us versus what's going on outside. To Randy's point about this part in the middle, I think just generally all boards, and maybe these are really, like you said, John, more discussions for our May meeting as a tri-board, because it's going to be about sort of discussion and deliberation. But I think we also need to kind of read the room, and I just want to say unequivocally, I want all of this to succeed. I want these initiatives and developments and professional training and improvement. I don't think there's any question that there's room for improvement, but I think in our efforts to do that, we also need to see how things are being perceived in the community and just be really conscious of certain phrases and words that are going to kind of, cause the whole thing to sort of self-destruct, where there's so much wonderful language in this introduction. When you throw the word systemic in there, you got a lot of people whose hair is standing on end. So I think in the whole process of doing this, if we could be conscious of some of those triggers right now, that in the long run, we're probably going to accomplish more of what it is that we want to do. And that goes, I mean, I have like 12 pages of notes that I made today on almost like every question in the survey. I don't think this is the time to do that. But I think there are some small adjustments that we can make that will bring us a wider audience of acceptance. I mean, because what we want here is data. We want information, we want data. And the way we're going to do that is if we can make this palatable for the largest number of people possible. We don't want to put something out there that 40-50% of the community is going to say, no way, I'm going to show this to my 6th grader, because then we're only going to get a really small segment of the population. And that's not what we want either. So I don't have any answers other than that's all for now.
So yeah, I will say we really did try to avoid jargony words. I know that there are a couple in here, but I think we tried to make it not to make it very applicable and something that resonated. But I hear you and I appreciate the feedback. So let's move to the surveys. So I know it's getting late. And I don't think, we definitely don't have to go through as much detail. I know folks have lots of feedback and questions and comments. I did, I know you guys have all these. I think they're going to be posted so the public can also see them. Just in terms of the surveys, I think there's 3 big points. So in terms of process, we had a working group that worked on the development of the surveys. In the working group were, an HR expert who develops surveys for a living. We had somebody else who does a lot of psychometric work. So there were people who had a lot of expertise in surveys. As you also know, we worked really hard to look at nationally normed, recognized surveys and pull, questions from those surveys so that there is not bias and these questions have been vetted. The working group presented the surveys multiple times to the DEI committee. We were, very fortunate to receive feedback from the community, also from the working group, or from the full committee that included parents, students, school teachers and staff, and then other board members. And we got lots of feedback and made, pretty substantial edits to each of the surveys throughout the process. I think there's 3 big things for the public to know and for the board to also understand is, one, when it comes to student surveys, we never collect student information. So everything is 100% confidential and private. There's no way to track any of the student information. So if students take this survey, again, all of that is confidential. Parents have the choice to put their information in if they so choose to be part of a focus group. But again, it's completely optional. Second, the surveys, families can, go ahead.
Sorry, just for clarity, in the parent survey, parents can include their names, but the student survey, no.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, and the same thing with staff, the staff survey as well. So both the middle and high school surveys are 100% confidential. There's no opportunity at all for any information collection. Number 2 is the surveys are 100% optional. So families have the choice to opt their children out of the survey. The other thing is questions can be skipped. So if there are questions that are not a good match for the student or for the family or the person taking the survey, it's easy to just skip past that question and go to the next question. So there's no obligation for anybody to answer a question within the survey. And then the third part, there's been a lot of discussion about, especially in the middle school survey, around age and developmental appropriateness. And so I just wanted to quickly mention that, we Dr. Pearson-Ugal went and, talked a little bit to health teachers. We looked at some of the health standards in Connecticut. And while these topics aren't always addressed specifically, they do come up in class in the middle school setting. I also reached out to a national expert in pediatric endocrinology and gender and had her review the survey just kind of out of curiosity, who also, felt like the survey was a good survey for students in middle school and felt like it was age and developmentally appropriate, which gave me some, again, our goal is to, with this survey, I think the big goal is that we are trying to find out information from groups of students and really identify where some of our areas are. I want to thank the students who came on earlier tonight and shared some really painful stories. I think if you've been on this board or you've come to board meetings, we've heard stories like that from many families and students. And so we are working really hard to identify where those areas of concern are so that we can address them as a school community. That's that.
Any additional questions for Devin? Okay.
John, it's more comments. So I just kind of want to look to your guidance for what we want to accomplish this evening. Is this a time to give Devin feedback to take back to the committee? Are we waiting until May?
Yeah, I think so. I think the feedback is welcome tonight, and especially if it's something that Devin can take back to the committee and it informs the work that they do. I mean, would it make sense for there to be a sort of special meeting that's sort of done additionally where people can come in and sort of give more like those types of things would be very useful, especially if it helps us to prepare for the May 25th meeting.
All right, then one of the things I just want to say that, and some of these are just kind of perceived perceived rubs that, we're hearing from the community and some of the feedback through email. Me personally, as a board member, I feel like the survey is premature right now. That is not a comment at all about the need. I just would love to see this happen in conjunction if we are bringing a DEI consultant in, which I understand. I mean, we've approved funding for it. The budget was passed. So conceivably, that is hopefully going to be happening in the near future. I understand the idea that we want to gather information to give to the consultant, but I would rather see this informed by the consultant. I don't think there's any question that we can improve, that there is a need for education, that there's a need for professional development. I think that training at the building level, all of that can proceed without dispersing and dispensing this survey. And I think part of what I'm not quite understanding, I mean, as a board member and participant sort of outside the committee, is the survey a done deal? The discussion that I either missed or don't remember is, should we be sending out a survey right now? And I think that's part of what I meant before, where I'm saying we kind of need to read the room. I mean, if you look at, it's so disheartening to me right now how divided the town is. If you look at the results, which I was actually surprised by the results of the referendum, I'm not sure that this is the best time to be putting this out to folks. I'm not sure that we're going to achieve what we want to achieve under just sort of the stresses and kind of the emotions that are running rampant in the community. I just wonder if we didn't proceed with the consultant, proceed with training, exploring other avenues, but maybe hold back on this idea of the survey that's being pushed into people's homes with terms in it that are alarming to parents and phrases in it that are potentially polarizing. If it isn't just better to press the pause button at this moment. I can say as it is, if I had a sixth grade, and I also think that looking at focus mostly on the middle school one, I guess I'm kind of talking directly to Devin, but, I also wonder if there isn't room for sort of a stepped kind of approach. Like, I don't know that I would give this to my sixth grader, but I would probably feel okay about sitting down with my eighth grader, and letting them read through it and letting them go through it. I think, with elementary and middle school age children, it's like dog years, going from sixth grade to going from like sixth to seventh to eighth grade. Those are major shifts and changes. You think about what a 10 or an 11-year-old is ready for and what a 13 or 14 is ready to talk about and discuss, and how parents are going to be feeling about how comfortable they are introducing some of these things to their recently stepped up fifth grader versus their child who's getting ready to, talk about their high school career. I just think there's more conversation to have. I think there's a lot more conversation to have. And I hope that we're not at the point where we're saying, this is how it's going out to parents. This is happening.
I think that's really good feedback, Jenny. And I went through the survey with my sixth graders, and we talk about a lot of stuff. We have a very kind of open line of communication at the dinner table every night. And there were a bunch of things where the answer was, I don't know. And I was like, okay, interesting. And, was able to say, that's okay. That's why that option is on there. Or you can skip it, and so that was good. But I think it's really interesting, the feedback about the difference between a sixth grader and an eighth grader can be, pretty big. So that's really good feedback.
I just want to wait one last comment about just kind of general. I'm sorry, Devin. Generally, the idea of putting something out there and saying to people, it's okay because you can opt out, or it's okay because you can skip questions. It doesn't sit well with me. And I don't think it sits well with a good number of folks. Mm-hmm. I think the better approach is to create something that pretty much everybody feels like they can get on board with, and feels like they were heard in the creation of it. And I know there were opportunities for feedback, but now that this draft is out there, it's another phase of, kind of vetting and looking at it, and I felt that way about some things that have been put out by, the elementary schools, some of the social curriculum. It's like, okay, great. So I can opt out, but then you're creating another circumstance where you're possibly making your child feel different or a family feel different. So I think that's potentially a situation where it's off-putting, where the goal again is to bring as many people in to participate and feel really good about participating. That's all.
Thank you, Jenny.
So I will say, I think, just really quickly to respond to why survey, why now, like as we've discussed on the DEI committee, I think this is, you kind of look at this work in 3 steps, right? In terms of the equity framework. And the first step is, what are we doing? Like, how do we review what we're doing really well? And how do we identify some of our challenges? And so we're really in step 1, which then leads to, a theory of action, and then, a plan with, what are the steps we're going to do to implement that plan. And so we've, as a DEI committee, identified that we have some data from our climate surveys, somewhat limited data, honestly, in some of these specific subgroups that have potentially shown some data that there could be concerns, which is why the survey does highlight in specific areas where there have been concerns, both qualitatively from what we've heard from community members, but then also in some of the data, the limited data that we do have from some of the climate surveys. So one of the reasons that the survey is an important step is that it does begin to give us further information of where to take action. And Jeff, I can respond more to, I think, some of the specific questions and just kind of the discussion we've had on the committee around, why are we phrasing some of the questions the way we are? I think we can talk a little bit about that, but Jeff, I don't want to kind of miss your question.
Well, thank you, Devin. The one group that I think we missed, or that the survey questions missed, was our special ed community. We have an awful lot of a lot of kids fall into several different categories, and I know I think there's a total. Let me check. Special ed, I think there were 2 questions, and wasn't much follow-up. Just for the student to identify, do you receive special services, and that was about it. And certainly the special ed community is works very hard to be a part of the school, and the parents are very active and very involved, as they should be. And I just think that if we're going to talk about inclusion as part of part of our mission, then certainly how can we do the very best job possible when it comes to our special ed kids.
So thank you for bringing that up. I think if you look on question 9, one of the reasons we included, and not only this is also in the parent survey, it's in the staff survey as well, and the high school survey, this is actually something that often gets left out of other surveys. So I think, Jeff, I think it's a really good point is, if students self-identify in this category, it allows us to then, as students go through the survey and potentially even the next question, do you feel safe in school? Do we have a concern with students who self-identify as having a specific learning disability? Are we seeing some sort of, information in that data? So we are able to cross-reference with that question to other questions. So I think it's a good point and something that we really did try to make sure we covered, but it's a good point to potentially say, did we do enough? And, go back through the survey and look more specifically if we should, in some of the places where students can choose different answers, did we ask more specifically about specific learning disabilities and the impact?
And it's also in 17, 21, 31, and sort of anywhere else where we say, you know, based on this, or this, it's included. But I think, Jeff.
Okay, yep, you're right.
It's really important that we're making it clear that it's there and that it's an important, you know, topic.
Yeah. And then I will just say, I you know, I've heard, and I definitely understand that for, you know, some folks, some of the wordings and the questions are unfamiliar or maybe a little uncomfortable. You know, we got very explicit feedback from people on the committee and also members of the community during public comment that it was important, especially, and the question that I think has come up, and this came out in public comment earlier as well, question number 4 about gender identity, is that for students who identify outside of the gender binary, that just putting other there is actually offensive and painful for students who identify in that way, which is why we went and put different terms there. And again, I understand for some folks, those are unfamiliar terms and there's some discomfort in those terms. But it was important to community members who have gender nonconforming children or who are gender nonconforming themselves, that we use the appropriate terms, because for them, it is seen as offensive if those terms are not stated. And that was why that choice was made.
Okay, any additional questions or comments for Devin?
John, I guess I was misunderstood the purpose of tonight, because I think like Jenny or somebody else on the board that said I went through every question and have comments on almost every question. If we do this May 25th, we'll be there for 3 days. We will. First of all, you're going to go through 4 different surveys, and again, I have almost a question on every one. Number 9 that Devin just referenced. Does a rising 5th grader identify as having mental illness?
So the survey is not for rising 5th graders. In fact, it was intended to be done.
Grader. Devin, a rising 5th grader is a 6th grader next year when the survey comes out. I assume we're not giving it this year.
So the survey was intended to be done more towards the end of 6th grade with, so
we're going to
but
wait
again, I think it really varies by student. I think, again, some students know their specific learning disabilities or specific disabilities, others may not. Some students identify with specific gender identity, others may not. So right. There is variation for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just one example of a question that, you know, that's not, I guess I'll go back to the very beginning when this all started, and I think I asked Stephanie a question in an email. What are we trying to accomplish? And I'm not going to make this into a 45-minute, you know, conversation, but it needs to be. This survey, I have multiple issues with the survey, but I'm also just big picture trying to figure out what we're trying to accomplish and who we're trying to help. And I'm all for some of the premises and many of the draft comments and statements that are made and were made 15 months ago when we started this. But for instance, where did the questions come from? I think you listed in one of the emails that came out today, maybe from Heather, there were some footnotes or whatever. If we're lifting questions from other people, they need to be footnoted, no? Did you guys write all these questions, or did you pull them from other places?
So these are all open resource questions that we pulled from the U.S. Department of Ed. We pulled from GLSEN. We pulled from other nationally recognized surveys. We can definitely add those footnotes. There were a few questions that were edited to be more specific to Easton or more specific to the specific survey on which it was found. And just to your first question, I think when you ask the question of like who are we trying to help, we are trying to help students who aren't having the experience that we all hope every student is having. There are students, we heard from one tonight, Jack, my heart breaks for you. And there are students who are not having a great experience. They're feeling bullied. There are students who we don't know feel that way because they don't feel safe telling an adult who may feel safe, in a survey situation. And so I fully recognize that for many of our students and many of our kids, they are having a lovely experience in our schools. And I'm grateful for all of the educators and leaders who make that possible. But we also know that there are a portion of our students who are not. And we hear those stories on these meetings. We hear them in the DEI committee. We hear them in the ER9 meetings. I've heard them at the soccer field, at the baseball field, from people who, come up and tell me those stories about what's happening. And again, we have some students who are feeling marginalized, and that's why we're having and asking these kinds of questions.
Devin, you 100%, and it was disheartening, to put it mildly, to hear from Jack Beebon. This survey doesn't help Jack Beebon. Listen, nobody should go through what he's gone through, but I don't understand how this helps. I really don't. I mean, I'll continue to go through the questions because I think it's important and I think it's relevant tonight. Because again, May 25th is going to be a gong show if we go through all 4 of these surveys.
So I think it's important that go ahead, Dr. Harrison.
So this survey wouldn't help Jack because he graduated. But if there is a student who is having similar experiences that Jack is having currently in our schools, this survey will give that student an opportunity to share with people who could make change what their experiences are. Now, ideally, we would want students to feel absolutely comfortable running to any adult in the building to share their experiences and to reach out for help. But what we have to take a moment and look and recognize is that we may not have created an environment that a student would feel comfortable doing that. And so how do we create that environment unless we know what it is that we're trying to fix? And I think that that with the student's experience, and we're in the business as a school district, we're in the business of teaching and learning. We can't ignore the fact that a student's social and emotional well-being has a direct impact on their ability to learn. And so as the educators, as the people responsible for their learning, we have to make sure that we are creating an environment, that we're doing everything that we can to create an environment that will maximize their potential for learning.
1000% agree. 1000% agree.
That creates this sense of urgency. So it's, so why do this? Because they matter. Why do it now? Because they can't afford to wait. I think that—
You're missing, time out, doctor. You're missing my point. I get that. I 1000% agree. Are we saying that we don't know we have students in our district right now that need help? Is that what we're saying? That we need this survey to find them? Is that what we're saying? Because I don't think that's what we're saying. That's not what I feel. I know we have students that need help in the district. We all do. We all live here. There are neighbors, there are friends, there are friends' friends. I can't imagine that Jack Beebon went through school from kindergarten to 12th grade and nobody knew what he was experiencing. I hope not. That would be more horrific than the stories we heard tonight. That's my point.
So does that mean, are you advocating that we simply move forward without surveying and assume that in every one of these cases, in each one of the places where we could be experiencing that challenge, that whether or not we actually are to a full degree in each category, that we act as if we are?
John, can I jump in?
I don't have the solution.
Yeah, sorry, asking Rainer specifically.
I don't have the solution. All I'm asking is, does this survey, how does this advance us helping children that we know we have in our district already that need help?
It allows for
we said it's anonymous. We're not going to identify anybody.
Right, but to what
But
degree?
Right. It also gives us information,
If there's
specific
one student,
information.
if there's one student that needs help, we need to help them. Doesn't matter if we have 1 or 800 in Easton, right?
Correct,
I mean,
but
that
it
doesn't
also
matter.
helps you identify specifically areas of specific need. So for example, if we identify that there is a specific need, if we use Jeff's example within the special education community, where students are feeling bullied or verbally harassed, then it allows the kind of plan of action forward to spend more resources and time focusing in training and support of teachers, or anti-bullying plan more focused and thoughtfully developed around that specific group of students. So of course, I think everybody is doing the work there. Everyone I've talked to in the schools, their goal is to make sure that every student feels safe and included, but there are students who do not feel comfortable going to an adult. They don't want to talk about how they might be embarrassed that they're being picked on. And so surveys do give opportunities for students to put things down on paper that they may not be prepared to say to an adult, and it allows us information to then move forward
and it's
more
also,
specifically with a plan.
It's also specific, a question 15, right? Do we need to do something about the way we approach the monitoring of bathrooms, cafeteria lunch, PE class locker rooms, hallway stairwells? If we find that the answers to the survey tell us that people feel unsafe in a specific one of those many areas that are identified, that helps inform the specifics of the approach that you would come back with. Jenny, please.
Okay, first of all, Randy, I want you to know that you're heard. Absolutely, 100%. I hear all sides of this. That's what Randy's alluding to is kind of what I was trying to get at before, is that what I'm hearing Devin say and others over and over and over again is, we know that students are having this experience. We know that students are feeling ostracized. We know there are marginalized groups, yet we're sending out a survey to try to ascertain or to gather that information. And I think for some folks, and me included, it's somewhat counterintuitive. I don't think the survey as written and as designed is going to give us the kind of specifics that we would want to help, like you said, maybe divide resources or focus attention. But even hearing that conversation to me is concerning, because I don't want to make decisions that say, all right, we're going to focus on the special ed population versus, gender decisions or appearances or race or anything else. I would rather see less focus on this survey because one, I think it's polarizing in the community, and I don't want to see anything else further dividing Easton more than it already is, because it's just heartbreaking, right? It's just absolutely heartbreaking right now. People are at odds. There are signs all over the place. We just had this referendum. I mean, social media, it's not good right now. It really isn't. The climate and the temperature in our town is divisive and alarming, and it's just not good. If we know that we have these kids in our midst right now that we need to protect, I would say skip the survey. Go straight to training. Go straight to consulting with people who can help us better train our teachers and better implement programs that are going to help protect these kids and are going to help educate our community about how to protect them. And maybe not even protect, maybe that's not even the right word. Advocate for, instruct, teach them. I think the conversation we need to be having is, when is it appropriate to, we want to introduce these terms. We want to set goals that when a child leaves middle school and moves from Keller onto Barlow, that they are educated and aware of and understand all of those terms that were listed under the gender questions. But the conversation needs to be, when is it appropriate to introduce it? In what classes is it going to be introduced? We need to talk to parents about how they feel about those things being included in the public school system. I think implementation right now and research is more, not the word research.
Mm.
Oh, I don't know if I'm really getting at the right point here, but the survey's causing a lot of angst. And I think right now it's more of an obstacle to what we all want as the end result, which is for every kid to walk through our schools feeling safe, accepted, heard, understood, and further, that our curriculum represents the student population that we have.
Yep. Yeah. Can I,
sorry, John.
Time out for just 1 second. Randy, I think you're spot on. If we go in and we're trying to hit 4 surveys on the 25th, forget it, right? We're going to be there till 2 a.m. I think we need a special dedicated meeting to discuss this content. And I think it's got to be a joint ER9 conversation. And I think it's got to be led as a workshop where we get a very clear explanation of what the plan is and sort of, all that stuff. So I would propose that we sort of table the conversation for now with the intent that, I will work to lobby the other board chairs that we get some kind of meeting together where we can have sort of the deeper conversation, and probably outside of that May 25th meeting.
Yeah, that's terrific. Listen, I'm in favor of what Jenny said. I'm in favor of a survey. I'll share, Devin, with you and John, my individual comments on the survey, and they're along the lines of question 11. Question 11 poses a question: have you ever felt uncomfortable, embarrassed, humiliated? I'm going to pick on Dr. Harrison for a second. Dr. Harrison goes to use the restroom in a 2x2 aircraft. He's going to feel uncomfortable in the restroom because it's too small. That's not humiliated. Those are two very different standards, two very different things. And so my point in that is that's either a 2 or a 3-part question. It's not a single question. But those are the sort of comments. Now, there are others I have in here, but that's the substantive type of comments that I look at a question that's framed, and I don't think you're going to get accurate answers based on the way the question is framed. But again, I don't want to take
I mean, so Randy, just to that point, I mean, I think we're selling our kids a little short. I mean, I think that 6th graders and up, within the context of this survey, they would understand uncomfortable or humiliated within the context of this work. And I think to think that they wouldn't.
I'm not suggesting
we may have a lot.
I'm not suggesting they wouldn't, but does it make a difference if a student is uncomfortable or if they're humiliated? Would you rather know?
The other piece that I'll say, and then I'll just mute, is if the survey, because we haven't surveyed anyone, if the idea of the survey is this polarizing, what makes us think that we could move forward with action steps without the same level, if not more, animosity or barriers? And then at what point do we say, if this is what's needed for our kids, then this is the right thing to do?
I'm not sure. The second part, sure you can, but my point, and maybe you're not looking at the question, but if you're asking a student if they're uncomfortable, if they were made uncomfortable by a teacher, that's an issue. If you're asking a student if they were humiliated by a teacher, that's a completely different issue. 6th graders can be uncomfortable for all kinds of different reasons, but humiliated is a wholly different standard. And my point is, it's semantics, but you can't ask the same question. You can't ask that in one question. That's it. And I'm not an English major, but you can't.
So thank you. I think, so just 2 points. One, there are questions in any survey, you ask questions, multiple times in different ways to make sure that you're not getting, you would never just ask a question one way, right? Because then you don't have enough information to say that data is reliable or valid. So the questions throughout, you'll see there's multiple different ways certain questions are asked, and it's intentional so that you have a valid and reliable result over time. I think the second point, and I hear what folks are saying in this, frustration with some of the divisiveness in our community. I I guess I see it differently. I think we're having really hard discussions and they're uncomfortable. And I think that's actually part of, at times discussing really uncomfortable and challenging things, like, when we know that some of our community members feel marginalized, or we know that within our school, some of our students don't feel as safe as other students. And those are really hard discussions, and they're going to bring out really difficult feelings at time, and I think feel divided. But I actually think those are the conversations we should be having, because we all care deeply about our students. We care deeply about our community, and the way we grow and get better is through having some of these difficult and I think at times divisive discussions where we disagree, and we can do so respectfully. And I think it's a good example tonight. There's times we disagree and we're able to do so in a respectful manner. And I appreciate that. I will say, and I appreciate Dr. Harrison saying this, going forward with an action plan without data it makes it very hard to then say to the community, how did we get better? Right? Like, so this is also a baseline of where we are in terms of, one, the prioritizing where our action and resources should go. Two, a baseline to better understand what is good, what is growth from here, and set goals so that we can, if we were to give a survey next year and the year after, understand where we are growing and where we need to adapt the plan. So I appreciate people wanting to move forward, and I'm grateful that there's such a bias for action. And so I respect that. I also want to respect that our community wants to understand why we would take specific action going forward, and want to honor that data helps to inform that prioritization and the resources we would put against it.
Devin, that was awesome. Thank you for that perspective. I think that was a really great way to frame it. I'm still a little hesitant just kind of on the whole concept. I mean, if I want grass to grow in my yard and I'm going to throw down seed, I'm not going to do it when I know that there's a deluge on the horizon, because it's all going to get washed away, and I don't mean that to sound corny, but I think if we want, our goal is success, right? And that's the hard thing. We all have the same goal, I think, right? We got to kind of check politics and everything else at the door and remember that this is about the kids. So any comment I'm making is because I want this to happen, and I want it to be effective, and I want it to be well received. I don't want it to be controversial. Honestly, I would change the name of the whole thing. I would take DEI off the top. I would take those definitions off the front page. I would call it student experience survey or school experience survey. And I guess that's what I meant about just recognizing where the triggers are right now and trying to strategize about how to get as many people on board with understanding that this is about kids accessing their education. This is about every kid in school being able to feel safe and to see themselves doing absolutely anything they want to do. It's about recognizing a changing demographic. It's about recognizing changing norms and different things being accepted and understood, and our changing roles as a school community. But if we throw something out there in the middle of a dumpster fire right now, it's just going to burn, So we'll keep talking.
Good. Yeah, good feedback.
And let's be clear. If we know of kids or groups of kids that we feel are in some kind of jeopardy, we need to act tomorrow. We need to pull those kids aside. We need to be able to sit and talk with them and let them know that there are adults in the room that care, and that we as a school community care, and we're not going to let them. But we don't want them to fall by the wayside. We don't want them to feel alone. We don't want them to feel unsafe. And that's an important message that, that maybe they haven't heard, but they certainly need to hear it. And good Lord, it needs to start tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll move on to the policy committee update, which I know we're going to spend just as much time on and have just as much interest. No, Why are you laughing?
Never know. You never know.
All right. The update there is simple. We've been working. Obviously, we have a regular scheduled meetings every Friday. We meet as long as we can get quorum, and we have been working most recently on a set of recommendations sort of specific to tri-board governance. So making sure that we have a sort of articulated set of principles related to when we get together, who is the chair, who is the, sort of how do the meeting minutes get recorded? How's like all of those things. So we're working to document those things and do plan to talk about it as we come into the meeting on the 25th. I don't think that we're actually looking at anything terribly controversial there until we get to conversations about the mechanism and how we resolve disputes amongst the three boards. So be on the lookout for more information there as we approach the 25th. All right, that takes us, any questions on that? Okay. All right, it takes us to discussion of possible action 6A, the Voluntary Early Retirement Incentive Program. So when we met last, we talked about the VERIP, VERIP, and we had presented that to the Educators Association. Dr. Harrison, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say here. I can provide a brief summary of sort of where we landed, unless you wanted to say anything else.
No, I'm good. You can go ahead.
Okay, very good. So the brief summary is that we had 5 educators and 1 administrator take advantage of the VERIP. Depending on how we land in terms of how we backfill those positions, the modeling looks like we will be realizing a total savings of somewhere between $102,637.87 or $112,304.67. So a fairly sizable sort of reduction in sort of the costs that we were anticipating for last year because of teachers who have decided to take advantage of the VERIP and will be retiring with the expectation that we'll be backfilling with someone who is coming in with less experience, but and with that comes a sort of lower step salary and contract. Are there any questions about where we landed with the VERIP that anyone on the board has or would like to discuss?
John, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but we plugged a number when we were coming up with our budget reduction.
Yes.
And we sort of had a plug in breakage, if you will.
Yeah, I think that was 34,000, Randy, was the break.
Okay.
Right. And you know, and we can see it in the last regular meeting minutes where we talked about that breakage, you know, sort of breakage plus the PE para plus the Zoom plus the sort of those various areas that we were able to get to the sort of the reduction that we're sort of trying to get down. So there's a fairly sizable difference here. And so unless there are any other questions, that would be a logical step to our next agenda item, which is budget adjustments post VERIP. Now, we had spoken at the last meeting about sort of first on the list. At least I think Jenny expressed it, and I certainly was supportive of it. That one of the first items on the list to restore would be the PE para, which I think was the only position on the list that we were not able to figure out how to restore. So certainly that would be one of the items for discussion. But I would leave it to anyone else on the board who has any thoughts about anything else that we cut that we would want to restore.
I would love to see it get put back in place. I think with sort of the side note that we make some observations and just maybe, you know, collect some information about the difference that it makes. I don't know how we would do that really, since everything has been so unusual the last couple of years, but if our teachers and even students, if we can just kind of have some data at the end of the year to speak to the benefits of it, certainly if we're going to try to fund it as an ongoing position moving forward.
Very good feedback. All right. So if there's no additional discussion on that item, I'm going to look for a motion. And I think the motion would be something along the lines of supporting the restoration of the PE paraprofessional position as a part of the approved budget.
Should we stipulate a specific amount?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
I think it's 16,000 was the number we had before.
The PE
approximately 16. It's not exactly 16, Mr. Park. It's approximately. So I think if you can use the language to prove it at the previously established number, that gives us a chance to go look it up. I don't want you to have you hold us to a number that's not exactly accurate.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Devin. And a second? Jenny, thank you. Any additional discussion? Okay, hearing none, call the question. All in favor? I see Randy, I see Gretchen, I see Devin, I see Jenny, I see Jeff, and I vote yes as well. The motion passes unanimously. Excellent. Okay. That takes us to the summer program. So I will give Stephanie an opportunity to give us an update on the progress there.
Great, thank you. So at this point, the Summer Academy advisor positions have been posted in both schools. Once we have a Summer Academy advisor in place, then that individual will be able to begin the process of gathering course descriptions and ultimately getting the flyer out to parents. So we are moving along more slowly than we had hoped. But I have been fielding some questions from interested teachers, and this is really new for Easton. So I am hoping that while it might be a small start, that we at least have a start and we have something to offer our students in the way of enrichment this summer, and that we could possibly grow it as time goes on. But that's really the status update. Once we have an advisor in place, then we can really launch the program to families. And I know a number of parents have written to say, what's the status? And certainly we're aware that we lose families as the weeks go on. But there will be, I'm confident that someone will come forward to serve as an advisor at least in one of the two buildings, and we'll be able to launch some offerings for our students for the month of July. So again, just as a reminder, parents will have the option to sign up for morning programming for 1 week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. It will run for 4 of the 5 days each week in the month of July. And this is really under the umbrella of enrichment. It will have an academic bent, so it will serve the purpose for some students to provide some reinforcement, perhaps enrichment, and for others, really more purely enrichment, something that may not be truly academically connected, but will provide a social and emotional connection, and will keep our kids engaged and hopefully just celebrate the community that is in Easton, and allow our students and our teachers to build new relationships and look forward to next year.
Any questions for Dr. Pearson-Hugo?
Stephanie, how many teachers have their own 92?
I don't have the answer to that. I can check with our human resource manager and get back to you.
Well,
I would guess about a handful.
I would think that this would be an opportunity for someone who has their administrative certificate to get an opportunity to exercise that.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Stephanie. That takes us to 6D, overview of the hiring process for the HKMS principal. So Dr. Harrison, do you want to talk about sort of the engagement with Dr. Arardi?
Yes. So after the special board meeting that we had, I reached out to Dr. Arardi, who shared a proposal with me, and I think he shared it with all board members, just laying out a timeline to assist us in the search process. Since that meeting, we've moved forward with posting the position on our district website, also on CT REAP, which is the typical outlets where administrative positions are posted, and have already received a number of applicants already. And so Dr. Arardi laid out a timeline. I know, John, you wanted to kind of talk about that.
So,
really, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's aggressive, but I think Dr. Arardi, if anybody can do it, Dr. Arardi can. Yeah, go team. So we obviously the advertisement for the opening happening now. We want to put out a parent survey, so to staff as well as parents, put out a survey. Have a series of focus meetings, and this is we're looking at the week of May 12th. Going through the end of May 28th, basically, that we would have the parent and staff surveys, do focus meetings with the PTA, with certified and non-certified staff, hold a community forum, a sort of virtual session where people will be able to sort of voice their thoughts about it, and then put together the actual hiring committee. Now, we have already formed a personnel search committee of all members of the board, and that all members would sort of be included in that. But a part of the consideration is inclusion of members of the community, parents, administrators, et cetera. And so, the intent will be that we hear from many voices as we're going through the hiring process. We would look to the first week in June for the first round of interviews, the first or second week in June, depending on how smoothly we can go through the month of May. And then the second round of interviews would happen right in mid-June, with the expectation that before the end of June, we'd be able to identify a finalist.
John, has there been any consideration to have these meetings be face-to-face?
Yeah, and actually, so any of the meetings, one of the meetings, so the public session we plan to have where we would present the profile. So the result of all the feedback that we've gotten from the conversations to say, okay, this is who we think we are looking for based on all that feedback. That would happen to public session. The public sessions that are happening after, and I believe it's May 17th is the deadline. I think that's right, but the executive order expires that allows for pure Zoom meetings, pure sort of external meetings. Now, to be clear, we've always been able to have telephonic sort of meetings, but you had to, in the past, you had to have at least a location that's publicly noticed that people could come to and observe the meeting. We're not planning on doing that. We're not planning on have some empty room noticed. We're planning on doing the meetings in person. So our June meeting, the expectation is that we're going to be in person. The May 25th tri-board meeting, that's going to be in person. It's going to be at Barlow. We're working out the logistics so that if we have board members who are uncomfortable coming in person, that they can come in via Zoom, but members of the public won't be on the Zoom. They would be on the YouTube stream, and they would be coming in person to the meeting at Barlow. So in person, yes. And there's a tremendous amount of work that we're doing to make that possible.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
John, how do masks play into that?
Yeah, so I think we're in a school building, and the mask, the masks stand in the school, for the rest of the year, and we know that, and so the expectation that people sort of continue to wear masks while they're at these meetings, and I think it's actually important that we are broadcasting that, because the decision for any board member or any member of the public to attend may be contingent upon that assurance that yes, people will be wearing masks.
I'm just thinking about facial expression, communication, clarity, people being able to hear one another.
Right.
You know,
It's not perfect.
a number of hours in the meeting, you know, I just wonder if there isn't some conversation maybe to be had about in person would be great, but under those conditions, is it necessarily moving us forward? So just throwing that out there.
Understood. Okay. Okay, so that is the hiring process specifically for the Helen Keller Middle School principal, and I think we will be looking, as I mentioned, by the end of June to have a special meeting for the appointment. Okay, good. Moving on to our next item, the final day for Easton teachers. In the current contract, and Dr. Harrison, feel free to jump in here as well, as always. The current contract has us at the students' last day of school, currently scheduled for June 16th, a Wednesday. That is an early dismissal day. The Educators Association and various sort of teachers had expressed to Dr. Harrison and Dr. Pearson-Ugal, that it would be much appreciated if there could be some consideration for allowing teachers' last day, instead of it being the last day on the 17th of June, that their last day could be the 16th as well. Now, certainly, if a teacher decided that they wanted to come in on the 17th, then they would not be barred from the building if there was a reason that they wanted to do that, but that we would not require them to come in. And so, I think for the purposes of our discussion, I think that the motion would be to set the last day for staff to June 16th, 2021 for the year. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Devin.
Seconded, whatever.
And thank you, Jenny, for the second. Any discussion on this item?
Yeah, John. Traditionally, the last day of school for teachers is a half day, and it's more of an administrative opportunity to kind of wrap up the year, because there aren't any students there, and they can break down classrooms, et cetera, et cetera. Asking the principals how does that work for them, and I think that would be an important piece to know.
Kim and Sue, do you have any thoughts?
I think the teachers actually do it incrementally, to be honest with you. A lot of time over the course of that last week, the teachers will break down the room. Much of the decor that's on the walls will just be covered by big sheets of butcher paper. It's really just putting stuff away into desks and in cabinets. It's not really. Well,
is that the time, Kim, when you meet with the staff in a building staff meeting and finish up whatever information that you have to share?
Yeah, we do typically have the sending and receiving meeting the day after the students leave. Mm-hmm. But to be honest with you, I think we can work that out through a combination of faculty meetings. I'm sure the teachers wouldn't mind between 25 and the time the kids would come in.
So this works for you, Sue? Does this work for you as well?
Yes, but I just want to make a correction to the calendar. To my understanding, we had a snow day that pushed out the last student day to June 17th. And the day that you're discussing would be June 18th, would be the teacher day. So, but yes, Jeff, I agree with Kim that all the work that the teachers need to do in advance of leaving for the summer, they will accomplish.
Yeah, I thought it was June 17th as well.
Okay. Is anybody, who would be is there anyone more expert than Sue and Kim? If you
There's a lot of people more expert than Sue and Kim.
If they're okay,
I'll jump in. I'll jump in as the expert. It is indeed the 18th, and that day is not a half day. It's a full day.
Okay, so sorry, I just want, for clarity's sake, the 18th is the last student day?
The 18th, I'm sorry, the 18th is the last teacher day.
Okay.
The 17th is the last student day, but we're talking about the 18th.
All right, very good.
And
And so
give me days of the week here. The 17th is a
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay.
Thursday, yep. Sorry, let me do this just so we're crystal clear. Okay, so I think we would be looking to amend the motion to that the staff and student day would be on the 17th. Okay, so Devin, I believe it was your motion.
So amended.
Okay, and Jenny, would you second that amended? Okay, any additional discussion?
John, I mean, substantively, I have absolutely no objection to this whatsoever. I mean, do we have any considerations, or we get ourselves into trouble with teacher contracts or anything of that nature?
It's why the board action was necessary, because the contract says that they would need to be there the day after students are there, and so that's why we would need to do this. Okay. We'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand and or say aye. I see Gretchen, I see Devin, I see Randy, I see Jenny and Jeff and myself, all voting yes. The motion passes unanimously. Excellent. Okay. That brings us to the Easton Board of Education upcoming member vacancy. So it is with great sadness that I inform everyone that Gretchen Goldstein has indicated her intent to step down from the Board of Education. She has been a solid member and sounding board, and somebody who is so well connected to the community, and a friend. And we will miss her on the board very much. She has agreed to stay on until a suitable replacement can be found. And so we will look, as Gretchen's seat is a Democratic seat, we will look, as has been the practice, to the Democratic Town Committee for a nomination. That nomination we will present to the board. The board will vote on that spot in our June regular meeting. Gretchen, thank you. Thank you for everything you've done and for weathering, what has been an absolutely insane amount of work and an effort over the course of especially the last 14 months. So thank you.
Thank you all. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with everybody here.
Okay. That takes us to item 7, public comment. I see KLT. You should be able to unmute now.
Thank you. This is Kathy Thompson from Mile Common. And I wanted to thank everybody for all of your tireless efforts. I'm a cheerleader for our schools, and I've been a loyal supporter for many years. But after seeing the NWEA results presented at last month's Board of Ed meeting, I feel compelled to share some tough love. I think we all recognize and appreciate that the past year has been like no other and very challenging. Our teachers have persevered and their efforts are tremendous. We think they're outstanding. While some decline in scores might be expected, the Helen Keller NWEA results are troubling. Typically, we're well above the national norms. A year and a half ago, our grade 6, for example, math RIT score was 10 points above the national average. Now it's only 4 points higher. A year and a half ago, our grade 6 ILA RIT score was 13 points above the national average. Now it's 7. Our strength versus the national norms is half of what it was only a year and a half ago. This is not a small change. A significant proportion of those losses occurred during this year and continued to occur. And score declines are across all percentiles, not only the lower ones. While it may seem obvious to blame the pandemic, the net is that HKMS did not perform as well during the pandemic as many other schools did. I see 2 key drivers of these dramatic declines, and I'm sure there are others. 1, a big reduction in instructional time because of a schedule with large chunks of downtime, filled, unfortunately, with what seems to be busy work for many students. For much of the year, there's been a very long homeroom period, 90-minute SOAR periods, and a long dismissal period. These 3 new periods accounted for nearly half of our children's time at school, and much of that time is unstructured or spent online. This is true whether the children are doing in-person learning or remote. While shifting to a schedule with a 201 minutes of instructional time for 3 days a week in late April is a great change, it just feels like too little too late. The second key driver, I believe, is the instructional time that our students have gotten has largely shifted to online learning, whether students are again in person or remote. This is not for the better. Our students seem to be spending much of their valuable instructional time logged in individually to sites like IXL, Kami, GimKit, Khan Academy, Google Docs, Google Classroom, Edpuzzle, GoFormative, and others. The list goes on. If these tools were really driving learning and mastery, we'd have seen different test scores. Last fall, parents were told that the beginning of the school year would be a catch-up period to address the disruption of school in March of 2019, and everyone understood that. Now, it seems we're being told that the next year will be another catch-up year. We cannot play catch-up for another year. We cannot go backward for another year. We must deliver significantly more instructional time. We have ground to make up, and we need to make tracks. And we must reduce reliance on online learning tools and let our teachers do what they do best, teach our children. No one doubts that everyone is trying their absolute hardest every single day, and I have complete confidence that we will learn from this past year, look ahead, not repeat what hasn't worked, and do something different. Our students cannot afford another year like this one. As Helen Keller's quote on the Sport Hill Road HKMS sign says, one can never consent to creep when one feels the impulse to soar. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kathy. Gail?
Hi, sorry
Yes.
about that. It's late. So my comment is going to be really short, and it's in response to the DEI statement and survey. And I just want to say that when we feel we need to repress a part of ourselves, we repress who we are as human beings. When students who have had to repress a side of themselves read this survey, they will know they are seen, heard, recognized, and more importantly, validated. How wonderful is that? How can that possibly be bad for them? We are talking about children's right to feel validated and recognized by their environment, which is crucial to their emotional and intellectual well-being and development. Are we willing to sacrifice that for a perceived sense of town unity? That's it.
Thank you, Gail. And I'm sorry, did you say your street?
Oh, sorry, Crescent Drive.
Thank you. Yeah, if everyone can just remember to just,
I know, it's late.
No, I forgot to remind you. So yeah, if everyone can just remember to state their, where they live. Thank you, Gail.
Mm-hmm.
Dana?
Hi, can you
Yes.
see me? Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm going to try to go fast. I got a few things to hit here. First is the idea of unlimited public comment. Okay, I've attended many ER9 joint boards of meetings. I've attended the DEI task force, selectmen meetings. They all allow unlimited comment at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. So my feeling is we just gave you a $17 budget. I urge you to consider in the future to allow unlimited public comment at the beginning and the end of the meeting. Some of the ER9 board meetings go 4.5 hours, but we're the shareholders. The survey. I've been attending DEI task force meetings since January. So I want to make the comment, it's not an accident this survey is controversial and divisive. It was not crafted to fit Easton. The chairman of the DEI committee, Heather Whaley, was quite clear. The survey came from GLSEN primarily. It was created by an extremist advocates at GLSEN. Here's a quote from their website. GLSEN was founded by a group of teachers in 1990. We knew that educators play key roles, blah, blah, blah. I could go on. Go look on the website. These guys are not just a group of educators. They're political advocates. From January to today, I saw very little change in the wording of the document. The committee was given tons of negative feedback from parents on their calls. And Dr. Harrison, Mr. Stimson, Devin, you were there, you heard it. The only concession that they made to concerns of parents was to lower the lower band of the survey age, raise it, from 5th grade to 6th grade. The language didn't change much. And my opinion is the reason the Righteous Task Force ignored the comments of conservative parents was they were convinced of the rightness of their cause and they did not want to compromise. So this is why the board is looking at an extreme document. It was created by an extreme organization. It was adopted by a task force who ignored the concerns of their fellow citizens. Dividing Easton, in my opinion, was the goal of the survey to catalyze social change. So what are we trying to accomplish with this survey? I'm tired of hearing the lie that we're just looking for data, okay? In my opinion, that is not true. And I salute Jack Beebon for saying it clearly. Thank you, Jack, and I'm sorry for your suffering. You said the survey is a teaching tool, and you were right. And that's a big reason why it's being pushed. Jack said it, Devin alluded to it. He said, we have to teach these students these terms, non-binary, cis, trans, queer, gender. So let's stop pretending the survey is just looking for data. It's looking to train the students. Okay, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong. That's we're educators. So if you want to train the students, I suggest a more effective way to do it is to give them a course in gender or add it on to the existing sex ed. Dr. Harrison asked, how can we go forward and fix cases of discrimination in our schools without this survey? My answer is the schools are already teaching off curriculum and they're instituting their own choices and they're going forward with change right now. I mean, a lack of a survey isn't stopping them, and I can give you direct evidence. A teaching professional at Keller described coming back from a seminar at Yale where they were discussing the problem of teaching Spanish without using the L and la pronouns and how to implement that at Keller. An irate parent at a DEI task force meeting stated that just surveying Easton, surveying the schools was not enough, and they wanted, quote, real change, real change. A teaching professional at Keller reassured her that real change was happening right now at the schools. They're not waiting for the survey. So I just say, let's stop kidding ourselves, okay? If you want to do the survey, fine. Let's be real about it. It's about teaching. It's not just about collecting data. And, let's just stop kidding ourselves that we can't put it in place without a change at the schools is happening right now as we sit here, because that's the way it's happening. And the last point, Mr. Stimson made the comment, how are we going to know what's going on in the bathrooms and bullying? I believe based on the school climate survey I read from 2019, I believe there was a question there about the bathrooms. I could be wrong. I will double check it and send it back to the board. But I think that we could have easily taken the existing school climate survey and modified it. We did not have to be looking at an extreme divisive document. I'll stop there. Thank you for your service.
Okay, Jalen? You should be able to unmute now.
Okay, I guess 4 Fawn Road in Easton. And I would just like to, preface by saying that it's really important. Oh, I'm going to talk about the survey, just to make that clear. I think it's important to recognize that the survey is not simply to prop up students in the minority at the expense of the majority, and neither is it just for students in the minority, it's for all of our students. if you look at a couple of questions, for example, such as like, I feel comfortable sharing my thoughts and ideas with classmates. I feel comfortable sharing my thoughts and ideas with my school counselor. My school building is clean. I feel valued by my classmates and the adults in the building. Those are all general overarching questions that just make sure that our students feel comfortable and they have someone to talk to. And despite the fact that many people who have just spoken during this meeting and like public comments earlier have mentioned having children in the school system, there's not a lot of conversation about my child thinks or and they say, because I think judging by the students that have spoken in the public comment, not everything is, as going as well in terms of just like inclusion and feeling comfortable in the building, being themselves as we might think it is. I just know myself personally, a common response to, the question of like, how was school is fine, but it might not be fine even when you say it is. And this survey just gives an outlet for students who say fine, but really think and feel that it's worse than fine. And they might just not feel particularly comfortable talking with their parents or fellow students and just need to identify problems that they see in the school building. And just, I guess, finally, I would just like to remind everyone just to be cognizant that not only is the survey a resource to students, but it's also a declaration of sentiment. We're just telling students in the building that they matter and we care about what they think and feel, and we accept that they are independent human beings that deserve respect, and that them and their issues will be addressed as such. And if even one student is let down by our school system and feels wronged by their teachers and fellow students, we have failed. Thank you.
John, you're on mute.
You're muted, John.
Thank you, Jalen and Krista.
Wait, me?
Krista?
So
Yes.
I don't even know who just spoke, I don't even know if he's still on the Zoom call, but thank you for that. That was, very touching. I see Jen's coming next. She's unmuted. So I just want to say it's very hard as a special needs parent to understand how the process would go for everything with the survey. Jen's on the call, and Kim, and they've been involved with everything with my son and getting him all the services, that he needs. So I just wonder if there would be an implementation of something to kind of like explain to the children with special ed, what the difference is, because I think if I was to go, David, what are you? I'm a boy, sissies, this or that. And we don't talk about color, we don't talk about race, we don't talk about gender, we don't talk about religion, we just support everything in our house. So I think it's really hard to kind of come out with this very strong survey saying, what are you? I'm a boy. It's kind of hard to put that into his place, and kind of, make him understand it. I mean, I could explain 100 times over again what it is. And I think Randy and Jenny hit it like very well, but I think we need to focus more on, we're all talking about, black, white, there's no gray there. LBGT, the lesbian, gay community. But we're not talking about our special needs, and special needs kids could be lesbian and gay. Right? So we just need to have like just more of maybe the para sits down and does more of like a one-to-one and says, these different things, like, how do you feel, just to kind of just support them, because just because they have autism or a special need doesn't mean that they can't be, out of the box. They can't be LGBTQ plus, right? So we need to kind of support that, because how do you express that to a child who can't understand? Or, David, how was your day? It was good. He got his finger pinched in between a something or whatever. And his parent came out and said this, and we're talking about it. And he said, oh, it was good. So, well, he did have a traumatic experience, but he would not be able to explain it to me. The only thing I will say, and Kim, she's amazing, and I'll say this over and over again, I can't even say it, enough, but we did, and we're Jewish and Christian. So Samuel Staples had a situation where in the boys' bathroom, my son did walk in, and he is autistic, he is dyslexic, and he has auditory processing disorder. And he said, Mom, there were bad words on the bathroom. So he realized that, but he didn't get to see the swastikas on the playground. So, I mean, I do think that there has to be something that we do for inclusion. But I know there is, and I know everyone talked about diversity and, division and what we're doing within the town. And there is a lot of that. And I'm probably at my time. So I'm probably John, you could kind of nip me, but I think we need to do something, but we kind of have to like tame it down a little bit because it is a very diverse town. I mean, everyone's saying it is a very diverse town, and they are segregating, people are segregating the town. So we have to figure out how we can, and like really do the inclusion, because there is a lot going on, and we just have to learn from, like we're people. So,
Thank you.
So if we could just support each other. So thank you, John.
Thank you, Krista. And Jen DeChesis. We can't hear you. Oh, maybe now we can. No, it says that you're unmuted, but it's we're still not hearing anything. We'll come back if you want to try to sort of get that. I will move to Patty, and then we'll come back to you in just a minute.
Hi, thank you. Patty Wonder, 4 Golfview Drive. I want to thank those who have taken the time to put together the DEI survey. As the mother of a trans daughter, who went through the Easton school system, I wholeheartedly support the questionnaire. I've read through the surveys, and I really appreciate how inclusive they are. I disagree with the notion that students won't know what the words are or understand them. One of the reasons to use all of the options and identities is so that so many students can feel like they've been identified, so they can feel like they've been seen. When someone feels alone in their school, the act of feeling seen is critical. The questionnaire might be the first time a student is feeling that inclusion or feeling like they have an opportunity to voice their needs. Perhaps, especially for the high school students, this is true, but I'm guessing for the middle school and maybe even the elementary school students, it's true. I hear that some are saying that they want to pause the survey, and I'm just wondering if maybe kids are more prepared to have the conversations than the adults are ready to have. My concern is that putting off the survey to make it more pleasing to the community is a slippery slope. There will most likely always be people who don't want it at all or who want the wording changed. So I think that it's important that we go forward. And finally, I want to thank the students who have spoken here tonight, because your opinions are so valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Jen, we'll try again. See if that works this time. No, we still can't. If you want to try to dial in via a telephone, yep, and then that audio will probably work. Very good. Okay. We just heard from Patty. Maureen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you can state your street and
21 Andrews Road.
Thank you.
So I don't know. My teenage son just told me don't say anything you just said to me. But I am a businesswoman. I own a business. I've been in banking for 29 years. The last 10 years, I've seen such a change in our workforce. I've had moms call me asking me why I didn't hire their son or daughter. That's been a wake-up call. And now I listen to what's going on in this call tonight, which has been very long. And I have my answer. We're not raising strong adults anymore. That's not what's happening. We're pandering to whatever the social movement is, instead of educating our children, giving them a good, solid education, and setting them up for success in this world, in business. Your mom and dad are not going to be there for you in another 5 years. I've tried to really listen to the younger people on this call. I really have. I'm just not sure what to say. I don't know what's going to happen to them when they actually have to go into the business world, where they have to interview with a manager, where they have to say what they can bring to the company they want to work for. That's what I want our children in this town to be set up for. I want them to be set up to succeed, not to fail. I want my daughter to be taught the skills in HKMS and Joel Barlow so that she can graduate and get a job and earn a living. I don't need this social justice. I teach that at home. I teach my children to treat everyone the same, give everyone the same opportunity. But if you want opportunity, you need to work for it. You need to study and you need to listen to your teachers. But if our teachers are going to be co-opted into this system, I'll opt out. Thank you.
Kevin?
Hi, yes, I kind of didn't really have any plans to come back on and make a comment, but I couldn't resist after kind of hearing the conversations of tonight. Again, Lilac Lane, Easton. I have a daughter who's in her last year at Helen Keller Middle School. And I think I have to first preface what I'm going to say of my appreciation for everybody at Helen Keller. I know that Sue Kaplan certainly knows for sure, as I've had conversations with her, with my daughter, and I appreciate the support and all the things that are available to these students. But I definitely have to make one thing. It just seems like if you look at things from the 30,000 foot view, we have all of our answers right in front of us. And I'll take a little piece of what was said before, and the attention that was brought to the NWEA testing and the resultant scores that came back is what are our schools really there for? What do we want them to perform and to accomplish for our students? And I can tell you firsthand, the emphasis doesn't seem to be on reading, writing, and arithmetic anymore. My daughter scores very highly in all of her testing, but yet there's still a confusion as to why she's not engaged and why she doesn't perform better. And I can tell you why. And it's because of some of the direction that we're going here and what people keep wanting to say. The town is resoundingly pushing back on these narratives. The vote spoke for that. Parents, if you engage them in these questions, have come on and told you over and over again, stop with this. But yet you keep pushing it. You keep pushing these kids into becoming the next generation of social justice warriors and political activists instead of teaching them to be employable contributors to this town, the state, and this country. That's what the school is there for. That's what our schools are there for. These kids that are coming out, and nobody should be treated badly in school, and it should always be dealt with a firm hand when somebody is treated badly, and deal with those people individually. I got news for those kids though. When you come out into the real world, and I don't mean to diss any comments that are made by the young college or recent college graduates that have come back into this town, but please go out and enjoy it. Learn what the real world is like. Fall on your face a few times. Find it hard to pay some bills. Come into a town like this where you pay exorbitant taxes. Then maybe you'll understand some of the comments that we as parents and citizens make on these calls. You cannot go into the real world hoping that you have a padded isolation room around you and that everybody's going to cave to every little thing that hurts your feelings. That's not the way real life works. And that's not what we're doing for these children. My daughter comes home and talks more about the nonsense that she runs into in school, about the gossip, about all of the other. Why is she not engaged more? Why is she not engaged in reading, writing, and arithmetic? Why is she spending her online time in Google Chat over and over and over again and every other website that they can access instead of being in reading, writing, and arithmetic? Maybe that's what we should focus our school time on, and not this indoctrination of a political agenda that belongs with the conversation of the voting adults in the room. Leave it out of the schools. The kids deserve better than this. Stop pushing the agenda. Thank you.
Julianne?
Yeah, so I just want to let like all the educators on this call know that like you guys really did help me. Like I wouldn't be the person I am today without some of the building principals I see sitting in this room. Like I appreciate like so much of what you all did, and like I know that this community like really tried to do their best, and they did, and that's wonderful. All of the things that you gave to us are absolutely wonderful and enabled me to be where I am today, which I consider to be quite successful from my view. But I think like what we're coming up is like not everyone had the experience that I did. And if that's because of somebody's like identity or identities where they're telling us like, hey, I didn't feel comfortable in the school system because of this, and here's what you can do to change that. Why wouldn't we listen to see that, you know, everyone can be as successful as somebody like me who happened to have identities that benefited me, including being straight and white and, you know, not low income. Not everybody has those identities. So why can't we lift up the people who are asking for help, saying that they're having issues, and just lift them up so that we can all get the success that I gained, and so that the resources that we're putting into our school are being utilized efficiently by students who need some extra recognition and extra resources in order to use the resources that we're giving them efficiently, right? And then the other thing I would say is that the survey recognizes something that's kind of hard to measure with like the other work that we would be doing, which is intersectionality. When you check off multiple identities, you can like cross-reference that and see not only based on race or sexual orientation or whatever what the issues are, but like what about people who have two of those identities, and what does that group look like? So I think that's a really huge benefit of a larger scope of a survey like this. And then finally, I'll just say that discomfort is really good in a community, and I think conflict brings us forward, but we need to keep going. We can't turn our backs when there's conflict. I think we need to keep having conversations because that's what makes things productive. We shouldn't shut down the conversation. We should keep having it. And if that means having more meetings about the survey, we should do that to get people in a place where they feel good about moving forward. That doesn't mean they have to feel comfortable about moving forward, because a lot of this is never going to be comfortable for any of us. And then also, the last thing I'll say is, as far as the younger people contributing comments, you don't know our experiences. You don't know where we've come from until we tell you. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to share our experiences. You can take them or leave them, but we value them, and we feel they're important to contribute to the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. Jack?
Hi, Jack Beebon again, BlackRock in Easton. I just wanted to come out and speak again. First of all, thank you guys all for the kind words throughout this meeting. They mean a lot. I just wanted to come out and speak about the fact that if you think that this is a unique case with me, it isn't. I've had friends in Barlow and in the ER9 school district school system identify as asexual, demisexual, agender, polyamorous, like everything under the sun. Like all different identities do exist even within our tiny community of Barlow. I have seen it, I have talked with them. They also have stories like mine, and this survey would help in a way like know that if we do experience something, that like it is safe to come out and say something, because specifically with my experiences, I didn't feel safe to tell adults and teachers and stuff because it wasn't happening already. And then if it doesn't happen and I'm the one to do it, then everybody knows I do it. And then I have a bigger target on my back at school, which is not a great thing. Obviously, that's bad. But it was the reality of me being gay and non-binary at the school system. And why this is so important to teach is because like I've known from a very early age that I was gay. I've known ever since I was like 4. Like when I was learning sex ed in like 5th grade, I already knew I was gay. So I don't think 6th grade is too early to be teaching this and to learn about this terminology, because it was how I identified without having the terminology to identify that way, even that early on. So that's why it's important to teach. I also just want to say this has nothing to do with politics. This is just about identity and how you identify as a person living in this world. Nothing of what I say has anything to do with political ideology, and I just want that to be super clear, because I don't want it to be twisted in that way. And yeah, that's all I pretty much wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Sarah Hunsucker, Elm Drive. I just wanted to preface what I'm saying with something. First of all, it takes nothing away from anybody to go beyond tolerating and respecting. So to me, tolerating anything is not enough. We need to show our students respect. They know themselves. This is happening in elementary school. At SSES, my kid was bullied and called a slur, and it was a double slur. It was Fatty Patty, and he was mocked for wearing nail polish. Not cool. Parents need to be kind and sensitive and raise their children so that people don't feel fearful to be who they are. Recognition of people's identity is a basic human right. If I walked around calling a cisgendered male ma'am, that is absolutely disrespectful. I spent the day researching and writing a document with statistics about suicide of LGBTQ youth and preventative measures that can be taken simply by recognizing who people are, by using proper pronouns, by creating a space that is safe. I am terrified when I hear stories about kids not being able to go to school without being called names, or having trans friends in the system and their parents being fearful of what's to come when they're older and they can't pass anymore. These are real issues, not just in our community. And I understand people saying they don't want to make it politicized, or they don't want it to be part of the curriculum. It's a health issue, just like race education. It is a health issue. And I'm tired of people burying their head in the sand and making this something to be minimized. This is giving people dignity. This is raising your children to be participating human beings in our society. No one should have to hide who they are because they're scared. This is ridiculousness. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
I think we have three more people, four more people. And I think we want to be mindful of the late hour and make sure that our administrators and everyone else can get in. So if we can try to be concise. And I see, I think Jen DeJesus was able to rejoin. I don't know if she was able to raise her hand. So we'll make sure that we give you an opportunity as well. So Agnes?
Hi, Agnes Bond, Black Rock Turnpike. Jack is not the only student who's experienced what he's experienced, though he is one of the few brave enough to speak about it. You face pushback when you talk about your experiences, as I think has been seen tonight. That makes it hard for our students to speak out. Students have said they're uncomfortable. Students cannot be successful in arithmetic and English if they're being bullied for who they are constantly. Schools also do have a responsibility for civic education. This is part of that. To write off the experiences of young people based on your view of the way that real life works is quite frankly rude. Students deserve to feel safe in their learning environment, even if you think they will fall on their face in the real world because they're too sheltered. They have a right to feel safe at school. The young people in this call are also voters, even if you don't value our opinion. Times are changing. Easton does not exist in a bubble. It needs to change as well. We can acknowledge that students have had good experiences. I acknowledge that students have had better experiences than I have, than Jack has. But it does not negate the fact that so many students have not had good experiences, and those also need to be acknowledged, and things need to change so that everyone can have a good experience. The survey is great, especially since so many people with experiences like my brother don't feel comfortable to tell other people, especially adults and especially administration. As Julianne said, being uncomfortable brings progress. These surveys don't give students ideas, rather they give words that they can then express themselves with. I also did have the sex ed talk in 5th grade when that was still part of the curriculum. And it actually just really helped me understand things that were happening in my body. I don't think 6th grade is too young for this. These students know how they're feeling, even if they don't necessarily have the terminology to express themselves. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Casiano, who is Cheryl.
Sorry, I couldn't, no. Can you hear me, John?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know how to change a name when I'm not a host or participation. So Cheryl Graziano, Deacon Abbott Road in Reading, and indulge my Easton neighbors for letting me speak in public comment, even though I'm not a Reading, an Easton resident. I actually do want to comment with respect to some of the questions and comments that were made during the board meeting, and thank you everybody for sharing your views, regardless of where they may be. And I want to assure everyone that as far as a sitting member on Region 9 on the task force was very, very, very deliberate in making sure that we hear every voice. And that would include conservative voices. That, in fact, we got many comments with respect to that they could feel marginalized because they have a conservative political view. And we were very careful not to politicize anything. And so every single word in the survey, and by the way, Glisson, I think I just want to clarify just a technical correction with respect to Glisson's survey. It is in one of the meetings that the commenters, that people had questions about whether that was a political organization, and it was documented in the meeting that people acknowledged that it is not a political organization, it's an educational organization, as were many of the resources that were used by the task force to derive the survey. So I really want to focus on the facts, the deliberation of the task force. We do welcome everybody's comments, regardless of their view. And in fact, from where I sit, I am from a personal perspective, I'm part of a multiracial family. I'm a first-generation Asian American, and I have gone through discrimination where people ask me, even now, where are you from? And I tell them, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And that's exactly that. This education, the survey is not intended to, it's intended to identify those who feel marginalized, regardless of why you feel marginalized. But more so than anybody else, it's to educate everyone else that we're all different, but yet we're the same. And that's the point of the survey, is to baseline what people know or don't know. Me personally, as a board member, not as a minority, and by the way, my family is multiracial. My kids are of Italian American and Irish descent, and they both feel marginalized and feel privileged, and they understand the nuance. But that's exactly what we're trying to teach everyone, including our community. So we want to give everybody an active voice. And so I guess to somebody's comment earlier, what's the point? That's the point, is to educate all of us, and so we can have more empathy. And it's not intended to be politicized, and we welcome everybody's thoughts to do that. And so reach out to me, reach out to my colleagues of the task force. You know, that's the point. It's just to educate everyone and not with a political view. And the stories that resonate with me personally in terms of why we're doing this is we started this discussion, if everyone recalls, a year ago. And our schools are doing a great job of teaching, you know, objectively what our history is, different stories from different folks that make up our country. But I think there is hopefully consensus that we need to do more. The survey is just a tool to identify what that more should be. It seems like there's consensus and we need to do more. Okay, so what's the more? You know, we've been talking about this for a year. If I could also remind folks that the survey came about because the task force originally thought, well, let's do focus groups. But we wanted to be objective and say, well, focus groups could also institute some kind of bias, if, you know, depending on who participates in those focus groups. So that's how we got to the survey. But if there's other recommendations on how we can objectively gather facts and make sure all voices are heard and then advance the good work that we're doing, the task force sincerely welcomes it. And I look forward to everybody's comments before and up to the meeting on the 25th. And thank you, John.
Thank you, Cheryl. Krista.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that I was on.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. My computer's a little glitchy. But
No
now that
problem.
I do have something, I just want to say to Jack, if you're still on the call, thank you for everything you said. Yeah, I'm so sorry that you went through everything you went through. And I can resonate with your, you know, with your experiences with my son who has special needs. And he has one friend. He has one friend in the entire school that he was friends with last year that was in his class. He has no friends in his class this year. He has one friend that that he sits with at lunch because of a very special person. And it makes his day very special. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's hard to listen to all of this. It's just very hard because we're all so different. And if we could just all come together and find like a medium to, you know, get the survey out and kind of find out stuff with special needs and LGBTQ and, you know, gender, race, everything. Like if we could just, you know, kind of like stop fighting each other. You know, we're all fighting each other. You know, we got to kind of find a medium. We got to find a, you know, I mean, I'm conservative. I'm liberal. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I'm everything. Like, we just need to come together and, you know, try to figure out, because, you know, I know that they were saying, you know, us, but it's really about our kids. So if we can just figure out what we need to do to kind of find like how to help them. And, you know, I mean, I'm not asking anyone to find my son friends because he has his one friend. You don't need a lot of friends. You just need one good one, you know? So I just want to say, you know, we got to just figure this out. I'm not 100. I'm just going to say I'm not 100% on all the questions in the questionnaire. I don't even know how to fill them out. I don't even know what I am at this point. After this call, I'm done. I don't even know what I am. So I just, you know, I think that we really need to come together, not for us, but for our kids, you know? And there's a lot of like, you know, there's a lot of people that feel one way or feel another, but we have to just feel one way or another and then just support each other. Just because you feel one way doesn't mean that you have to make someone else feel that way. You could feel that way, but you could support another.
Thank you.
So I love everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Krista. Tracy.
Hi, John.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, thanks for letting me sneak my comment in regards to some of the parents who spoke about, essentially we're sort of coddling our children by honoring their unique identities and by trying to address some of the problems in our society, such as racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. I don't really see that line of reasoning from point A to point B as that's coddling. A quote came to mind that I have here from a parenting expert that I had encountered before. It's not our job, excuse me, it's not our job to toughen our children up to face a cruel and heartless world. It's our job to raise children who will make the world a little less cruel and heartless. So I'm all for giving our children real life skills, book smarts, street smarts, whatever, all the smarts. But it's more about what world we want to envision. And if our children don't feel safe at school, if there are barriers once they leave school, to me, it's kind of two separate issues. There's the promise of feeling safe and free from bullying because of their identities in school, and then also out in the so-called real world where pulling yourself up by your bootstraps isn't good enough when there's systemic racism and sexism, homophobia, etc., and so on and so forth. So I don't see why we wouldn't want to give our children every advantage possible to feel safe and secure now so they can build that better world, because they were free to be themselves and received a quality education in all areas. I know, sure, we should teach our children to respect everybody at home, and I'm pretty certain that all of us do. I know I grew up in the colorblind era of the 80s and 90s. My parents are good people, but I did not know about all kinds of problems, systemic racism, until I sought out the knowledge myself. So for many of us, we don't have the language and the tools and the ability to teach our children these intricacies of society, especially if we haven't rubbed up against it ourselves, being as many of us are so privileged to not encounter so many of these isms in our own lives. So I don't think we're all necessarily qualified to give a comprehensive look at the real world as it stands and how we would like it to be for our children in the future. So anything we can do to make a less cruel and less heartless place for our children now, so they can bring it forward into the future, I'm all for, including the important DI work and the survey. So thank you all for that.
Thank you, Tracy. Dana?
Yeah, I'll be brief, and I'm only speaking twice because I wasn't able to speak for the first part of the first meeting, and I do think that we should extend that 20 minutes at the beginning. So really quick, as fast as I can go. GLSEN, I'm reading from the website, was founded by a group of teachers in 1990. We knew that educators play key roles in affirming learning environments for LGBTQ youth, as well as activating supportive educators. We believe in centering and uplifting student-led movements, which have powered initiatives like Day of Silence, Alley Week, and more. We advise on, advocate for, and research comprehensive policies designed to protect LGBTQ students, as well as students of marginalized identities. GLSEN is proud to work with the leadership of passionate activists, tireless historians and researchers, inspiring educators and advocates, and most of all, the students and educators working every day to ensure safer, more inclusive schools for LGBTQ youth. My question to Cheryl Graziano, and this is a rhetorical question, is if the DEI task force was listening to the objections of conservative parents, why didn't the language of the survey change over 5 months? Someone commented that this is not about politics. I would just point out, according to Aristotle, anytime we talk about what we do in public as a group, together as a tribe, it is by Aristotle's definition political. And that's what we're talking about here. What do we do in our schools? What should our policy be? So it is by definition political. Going back to the situation of kids in school who find themselves picked on for their race or gender and can't find an adult at the schools to talk to, I don't understand. We have 4 guidance counselors at Barlow. We have at least 1 full-time shrink. We have 2 social workers, and we're hiring another for 800 kids. And their defined role is to talk to kids about problems. So anyway, I just point that out. I host a lot of parties. I've talked about this before. I'm sure some of you are tired of hearing it, but I host a lot of parties. And as a party host, one of my jobs is to try to make everybody who walks through the door comfortable. So I have some experience at that. I also have taught college one time, but that's another story. But I think the individual at a certain point has some responsibility to make efforts to get themselves comfortable as much as the energy of the host or the institution or the school or whatever it is, the corporation is trying to make them comfortable. I just want to make that as an observation. Lastly, I want to talk about one question from the survey and then I'll shut up. The question is, please indicate to which extent you agree with the following statements. There are opportunities in my classes to talk about sexual orientation. There are opportunities in my classes to talk about gender and gender identity. Do you strongly agree, somewhat agree, disagree? So in my opinion, this is a question that there's nothing wrong with the intention of the question, but I think it needs to be reworked because a lot of us scratch our head and say, why should there be opportunities in the classroom to talk about gender and sexual orientation? Isn't that going to put some pressure on teachers who are already under some pressure? Don't they have enough to do? The classroom seems to me to be where we teach math, history, literature, science, and academic subjects that parents don't have the expertise to teach their students. That's why we pay you. We don't have time. So someone's sexual orientation or gender identity, to me, is a subject that should be discussed between them and their family, between them and their friends, perhaps in their sex ed course, or with a high school counselor or a social worker, a therapist. I mean, there's a school psychiatrist. To me, the classroom should not become a bedroom confessional, and we shouldn't encourage movement in that direction. And I know what the question intends. And the idea is that if sexual orientation or gender comes up, that a student shouldn't feel that they can't talk about it. And teachers, and I think that's fine, but I think this question just needs to be reworded. And I think that's my gripe with a lot of the questions here. It's not that the intent behind them or the concept isn't good. It's just that I know Glisson said it's a great questionnaire, but I think for Easton, I'll stop there. I just don't think we should be encouraging we're supposed to be teaching academics. Thank you very much once again for your service and for putting up with all of this, putting up with me. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. I know it's very late and everybody had great comments. So I just want to say thank you to the Board of Ed for, the respect that you have amongst each other to talk about this very important topic. I'm very supportive of making sure that all students feel included, all students feel safe at school, and that they have the best learning environment possible. No one should be bullied ever. And that's the point of this work. It's not about building strong kids to work in the workforce. I could tell you I spent 15 years at IBM, and they are on the forefront of developing programs to make sure that every IBM employee feels included regardless of their gender identity, their race, any of that. So you're doing your children a disjustice if you think that you're making them tough by not learning and understanding about how other people identify. We need to be understanding, and I'm sorry for all of those students who spoke up. I want to just say, please keep speaking up, encourage others to speak up, because I'll be the first to admit it. I have a lot to learn. I don't know much of anything about this topic, but I am willing to learn, and I am willing to understand what every one of those terminologies mean, because I think I'd have to say that probably more than half of this community does not understand what those terms mean, and they need to, because it's important human right. So thank you for listening, and I know it's late, and good night, everyone.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further public comment, we'll move on to board member comment. Any members of the board have any comment? Yes, Jenny.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. I just want to take a minute to respond to some of the things I heard. And I think that partly what's happening is that discussion about the survey sounds to me like it's being interpreted as work against the survey and the intentions of it. And I don't think that's true at all. I don't really think that that's what anybody said. I personally am hearing so many different goals, all of them valid, all of them that need to be worked on. But I hear some people talking about the survey as an outlet for student voices. I hear some people talking about the survey as getting baseline data about school climate. And there was one other one that I picked up on as well. But, you know, Randy made some comments, I made some comments, and I think part of it is about, you know, gaining clarity for what it is that the survey is intended to achieve. If it's about gathering student voices and people feeling heard and people feeling validated, I'm not sure that all of these questions are really designed to do that. I'm not sure that it's the best vehicle for giving students that opportunity. There are some, you know, woven throughout the survey, but I think we could do better if that's the goal of the survey. I think if it's baseline data that we're after, then it would be prudent for us to tweak it in a way that we get as large a sample size as possible. And that isn't about, like, the idea of postponing, the idea about kind of thinking about the climate in town isn't about squashing voices. It's not about not wanting to do this for students. It's being practical. I just looked up, just as kind of what spurred some of my thinking about this before the meeting, right? We just had a referendum with 3 questions. 2 of them were budgetary, that passed roughly 1,300 to 700. The third question on the racism resolution failed 761 to 1,259, pretty much the reverse of how those other questions passed. I voted in favor of the resolution. This is not at all a comment on, it's not a comment at all about on the results of it. It's just, I think we would be prudent and wise to consider what's going on in our community and the results of this resolution, you know, the vote on the resolution, in trying to be successful moving forward. Because the goal is for this to work out well. The goal is for this to actually happen, and for it to happen in a positive way. We need to pass budgets in the future for this to happen. None of this is going to happen without funding. I hate for that to sound callous, but it's the truth, right? There's money in our current budget for a consultant, for professional development. We want all of those things to continue. And again, it may sound somewhat calculating, but we need community support. We need widespread community support and parent support for this to be successful. And I don't think that that is a bad thing. I don't think that's a negative comment on the work. I don't think that's a comment that invalidates how important it is, or the experiences that we heard from students tonight. I think people need to understand that there are things that need to be in place for this to really work, for it to have long-term positive effects for students and people in our town. So I just wanted to kind of maybe give some clarification to that. You know, that questioning the survey isn't necessarily questioning the motives. It's looking to do this in a way that is actually going to get us the results that we're looking for. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jenny. Devin.
Sorry, I know it's really late and people are probably tired and hungry. So I just want to thank folks for sharing feedback. I think it's very helpful. I would really like to, in our next DEI committee meeting, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, like, make sure that we have clear purpose for the survey, or make sure that people understand that clear purpose, because I think that there is clear purpose there. And if that is part of the piece that is encouraging folks to slow down, I think we need to make sure that we're more clear in our articulation of that purpose and kind of the next, what the data would be used for, and those pieces. I just also want to say one other thing. I think we hear stories often in our meetings that are really challenging and emotional to hear. And I also want to point out that the diversity, equity, inclusion work is both about making sure that those incidents obviously stop, so bullying and things like that stop, but also that all of our students feel represented in the classroom. And in curriculum work, which is what I do for a living, we talk a lot about curriculum and instruction being like an opportunity for students to have windows and mirrors. So windows where they can look and see other experiences and lived experiences, but mirrors where they see themselves, and in text, in math questions, in a lot of the work they do. And many of our marginalized students don't have that opportunity. And so while it's really important to hear the very challenging and emotional stories and respond to those, we also have to make sure that we're building, opportunities for representation of different students and different voices, so that all of our students, because it actually benefits every single one of our kids, in order to have an inclusive curriculum and an inclusive work happening in our schools. So thank you.
Yes, Randy.
John, I got a couple of very quick ones. I think very interesting comment that I heard tonight amongst many was from Agnes, and that her brother didn't feel comfortable speaking to any of the adults. And that may have been a few years ago, what have you, but it raises a question in my mind. We have many professionals in our buildings these days that are trained, and if they're there and the students are there, but they're not connecting, that's a very interesting challenge that I don't know if the committee, if Devin's committee or whatever has talked about that or touched on that. We don't have to get into it tonight, but I'd be very curious to hear more about that as to the whys, if they know, or if anybody has any experience there. More, I guess, now switching directions to sort of process. What is, you talked about a special meeting, John. What are your thoughts there? And you've got Devin, your meeting is the 22nd. No, when is your next meeting?
I think it's the 26th, which is the meeting after the tri-board, the meeting after the day after the tri-board meeting.
Okay, so 25th, 26th, and then what are you thinking, John?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to the other board chairs, but I think it would be worthwhile to have a meeting where we really just focus on this. So I could imagine either, and that could be a meeting of the DEI where we're all invited in, similar to the way that we did the policy committee meeting recently to get feedback from all the board members, or it could be a special joint meeting that's dedicated to this purpose. So, we'll talk and we'll get back with the boards to see, which approach makes the most sense and where we think we'll make the kind of progress that we need to.
Okay, but big picture, are you thinking before or after the 25th?
Before, yeah, I would hope to do it before.
Okay.
Yeah, I would hope
that's what I thought. Okay,
yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I know everybody's looking for more meetings.
So just a quick comment, I think, in terms of, this concern that kids aren't telling adults, it is very normal. Over 50% of students don't report bullying or harassment in schools. And even, and this is a data point from GLSEN, again, 40 years of research, the ones who do report, only 29% actually result in effective staff intervention. That's not a statement about Easton schools or Reading schools or Region 9 schools. It's not like, I think we obviously want to build capacity and trust in our schools, but one of the reasons we have an anonymous reporting system, which, as you guys know, if you go on our website, any student can report, is because not everyone always feels safe making that report, because it also could lead, again, so I think that, yes, we should dig into that, but one way to get that data is also through a survey. So I want to make sure that we move forward with a process, but I don't want to also point fingers and make it feel like our professionals aren't doing a really good job in their very challenging spaces.
Yeah, no, I wasn't implying that, and you shouldn't have inferred it, but I just, if the data is there already that more than half the kids don't report, that's a huge challenge, and I don't know if it's solvable. Eventually, hopefully it is, but that's a huge challenge. But okay.
Randy, to your point, we've got at Helen Keller, we've got what, 320 kids. And we have a guidance counselor, a school psychologist, an academic mentor, a social worker, a building principal, and an assistant principal, who are all very talented and very good at what they do. And to say that we have a large swath of kids that don't feel at all safe or connected, I mean, I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but that's a pretty scary picture.
Yeah, and when Randy, you mentioned you're not sure if it's solvable, there have been many problems recently that I've been looking at and going, wow, I mean, how do we solve that? How do we solve that problem? And, doesn't mean that I'm giving up, but I'm with you. There are some really, really difficult problems that we have in front of us.
John, can I add something?
Of course.
Totally separate topic. I wanted to say thank you to the parent who mentioned the school data about Keller. I think that is definitely a conversation that we need to keep having about, the school schedule and academic time and moving forward. We have a DEI task force. We've spent hours tonight discussing, issues that relate to social emotional concerns, right? Which are obviously things that we need to spend a lot of time and resources working on. And I don't know if it's appropriate at all or anything has ever been done before like that, but I would like to see us gather parent feedback and community feedback, in that realm as well. I mean, I think it's just as important for us to get feedback from students and our constituents about how we're addressing academic needs, and to ask our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, that how they're feeling, that their academic needs are being met, represented across sort of a spectrum of learners, as much as some of these other things. So I don't know if it necessitates a committee or a task force, but I think it's something that we should be spending some dedicated, devoted, focused time to look at and evaluate and make some decisions moving forward.
Hear, hear. Yeah, and I think these things are interconnected, right, and related to one another. And I always go back to our 3 enduring goals, right? If we're talking about the sort of academic excellence, we're also talking about building these communities, and then we're also talking about making future ready learners. Those 3 goals, I mean, everything we're talking about in this space sort of relates to those. And I think when Kathy made the comments, I thought, oh, I need to reach out to Kathy because I'm very interested in going deeper on that conversation. And I know Kathy and I respect her a tremendous amount and would love to hear more. And so I think to your point, Jenny, like we can't lose sight of that, additional, that priority that's also should be front and center for us.
I may have misspoke. I think the DEI committee meeting is on the 19th, which means we could maybe do instead of the 26th. So sorry about that.
I thought it was before the tri board for some reason.
That sounds more right. All right. Okay.
I think we've had about as much fun as we can have, John.
I mean, we're only 3 minutes away. Oh, Randy's going to ruin it. Okay, fine. I'm just trying to break records here. All right. Randy?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 10:58.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.